Hello and welcome back to the Product Marketing Alliance's Product Marketing Festival 2021. I'm Erik Mansur, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, the title sponsor for this year's event. Coming up next is a presentation that I'm personally very excited about, a very informative session about setting up a Marchitecture, something I've never actually done before. Creating one of these for your own organization and really having the juice to be able to do so will let you be a trendsetter and a conversation starter in your company, immediately raising your profile. That idea itself hits pretty close to home for me, as I work for a company that's universally known as the category creator for the competitive intelligence software space. Crayon's recognized as the market leader, but it's not just because we've been the trendsetter and have been around the longest. Industry organizations like the Product Marketing Alliance, independent market research firms like Forrester, and the enthusiastic reviews of our own users on G2 have said the exact same thing. So grab your notebook and get excited for a presentation that I'm sure you'll find informative, Building and Launching a Marchitecture, a talk by Ali Hanyaloglu, Director of Product Marketing at Akeneo.
Hello everybody and welcome back to session 2 of the Product Marketing Festival. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Ali to the virtual stage next, but just before I hand over to you, Ali, I want to remind everyone that this session is completely live today, so we're going to be ending with a live Q&A. So make sure you get all your questions and comments and feedback and points you want to run by Ali in the chats throughout the session, and I'll be asking those to Ali afterwards. So yeah, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Rose. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us live, really appreciate it. My thanks to the PMA for organizing this. Really excited about this festival and all the content. And I'm excited to be able to share with you for the next 30 minutes on a topic that's been near and dear to my heart for the last several months. And it's all about how me as the Director of Product Marketing at Akeneo, working with a large team here to build and launch a brand new Marchitecture. As Rose said, we're going to do our best to leave some time for a question or two at the end. So you can put those in the comments, but I'll go in afterwards if I don't get to you and I'll take a look at them and I'll respond there if I can. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you aren't already. Always happy to help out my fellow brothers and sisters in product marketing. So let's get started. Now, do you know this building? No, this is not one of my choices for a summer cottage that I'm thinking about. This is the Basilica de Sagrada Familia in beautiful Barcelona. So if you've never been to Barcelona, if you've never seen this, go one day when it's all good to do so and you feel comfortable for that. But the story behind this is that I've been talking to some of you directly or via online, and some of you, I think, feel like that you need to build a Marchitecture or you've been asked to, but it feels like it's going to be an exercise in building a beautiful cathedral like this one. Now, if you don't know the history to the Sagrada Familia, it's not finished yet. It was actually started in 1882, and Gaudi was the first official architect to pick it up. And he wanted to bring his own vision and the cultural aspects of Catalonia into this huge architecture. He never got to see it finished. So it just got handed over from prodigy to prodigy to prodigy. And over time, it's grown and morphed. And as you can see, it's sort of a combination of different styles within a single building. Now, it's going to be finished estimated inside and out in the year 2032. But I wanted to basically bring some light to you all to say, you know what, building a Marchitecture isn't as hard as you might think it is. And there are some easy ways to be able to do it and see success with it. So let me go into that. What are we going to cover today? It's all about a journey, very much so. And so I want to start right at the beginning of that journey with you all and talk about what a Marchitecture is and what it is not, just so we get a baseline and we know where we're going. Then I'm going to talk about the journey that we took from the very beginning to realizing we needed to do something to where we are today and where we're going to go forward with that. And also, more importantly, I want to be able to share with you how we brought this to life. It's one thing to create a Marchitecture, but actually to apply it is another. And then I'll talk a little bit about what we're thinking next and maybe some ideas for you as well. So, first question, what the heck is a Marchitecture anyway? Did I just make that word up? No, first of all, it's a portmanteau. So a combination of two words brought together, marketing and architecture. So the first thing I want to point out is that a Marchitecture is not a pretty version of an architecture diagram. That's not it right there. And I've heard some of you talk about saying, yeah, you know what? Some of the technical guys I work with have basically given me an architecture and say, make it pretty. That's not what this is. So rather than me coming up with a definition, I'd rather take one that's out there already and sounds good to me. So let me share that with you. It's from Ian Gorton. He wrote a book called Essential Software Architecture. And this is what he says. A Marchitecture is an excellent vehicle for facilitating discussion by stakeholders during design, build, review, and of course, the sales process. It's easy to understand and explain and serves as a starting point for deeper analysis. That sounds good, but let's break it down a little bit. First of all, Marchitecture. You're going to see a couple of different spellings of it. There's Ian's one right here. Mine was a little bit different, but same idea. So it's an excellent vehicle for facilitating discussion by stakeholders. First thing I want you to take away from this is going to be something I'm going to repeat. A Marchitecture is a vehicle or a tool for having meaningful conversations with your key stakeholders, whether they are internal or external. That's the first thing. It's a storytelling tool. Next thing, it's easy to understand and explain. So that's another thing that you're going to have to keep in mind in the challenges of building a Marchitecture. If you were to show this to someone without talking through it, would they be able to get a lot out of it right away? And likewise, whoever is delivering this, is this something that they'll sound convincing with, whether it takes them 2 minutes or 2 hours to talk through? So that's the key thing to keep in mind. That's probably the trickiest part of this process. And then it's a starting point for deeper analysis. It is not intended to be all-encompassing with every single detail. Instead, it should inspire others to be able to look at that, hear you, and go, you know what? Tell me more about that particular part. I'm interested in that. That's the reaction you're getting from a Marchitecture. You've done it right. And then there should be follow-on conversations from that. Now, let me share with you some examples, some good examples of a Marchitecture. The one that I feel is the benchmark in this is Salesforce. Now, you may well have some others of your favorites. There's lots of good ones out there. But this is the one that I've always looked to and aspired to as well, for a few reasons. First of all, if you look at this Marchitecture here, you'll notice it doesn't go into any technical depth, but it is relevant to both a business and a technical audience. It talks a little bit about how their applications are built along the top, as you see there, which is really what you buy. But notice they're just now icons along the top there as a suite, as it will, if you will. It reflects their brand. We've got Einstein here. So that's associated with Salesforce. Totally get it. And the thing is, it actually has been adapted for things that had not come along yet. If you see some versions of this from a few years ago, there were actually empty spots along here. They've now filled those in. So I could go on and on about this particular Marchitecture, but this to me is a great standard to be able to look up to. Another thing is that do a search online for Salesforce platform and then click on images. You will find this or a variation of this pop up a lot, which is again testament to its success in that it's been used in so many different places. Now it's really important here. Don't confuse Marchitectures with Tarchitectures. Again, it's not another thing I made up. That is a portmanteau for technical architecture. This is a architecture. This is the classic architecture diagram that you tend to think about and have seen. So this is another example, Salesforce, as you can see. This is more intended for a technical audience. It's fine, it's good, but it's intended to explain how something works and what does it have. It's more for a technical audience who would understand each of the components here and want to know where those integration points are. So this is not a architecture. It's still important. You may well need to do this, but this is much more traditional. Now I'm talking about something different with the architecture. Now, some of you I've spoken to look at feature hierarchies or feature matrices. I would argue that's not a architecture. It's the starting point for creating one. And the reason being is because if you do have a complex offering in the portfolio of products that you are helping bring to market and bring to life, you may need to think about the hierarchy of capabilities to products and offerings and services and so on, and how they relate to each other. That's a great start for this. And you'll need to do this for things like pricing pages, right? But this is not an architecture. Hard to tell a story with this. And this is certainly not an architecture. Again, from Salesforce, this is an illustration or an infographic. That's not an architecture. It really is just a nice list that puts something in the center that is a focal point for conversation. It's an illustration, basically. So don't confuse it with that. If you're thinking this is an architecture, go back to the drawing board. So let's go into our journey. What did myself, my team, and my colleagues go through in order to build a brand new architecture? We actually had one to begin with. This is it. This was actually created before I started at the company. And it's good. It's fine. Pretty standard though, right? You've probably seen a version of this before. Talks about all the different integration points where data can come in. Then it talks about us and our offering. And then it talks about how all of that can be used. But I did spot some challenges when I started. And as I was using it myself, as well as observing others who were trying to use this themselves in their presentations. First of all, I did notice that some of our sales professionals were actually skipping over this slide or talking about it very quickly, which I found bizarre. And the reason being was because they were looking at going, as you can see, we have all these different sources that we support. And then, we've got our capabilities, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then, of course, we're going to support all different channels you have today and tomorrow. Wait, what? Hold on. There's more we can talk about here. But that was an interesting observation. Secondly, from the audience's perspective, something from the outside looking in, what I saw was a sea of icons. And the challenge is that in some cases, some of these icons and labels aren't relevant to me. I don't care about. And so I may gloss over. That's not good. The other thing, frankly, is that you could take out our logo and put the logo of a company in any other field in commerce technology, and that's a broad area, and it would still work. That was another challenge. It needs to be unique. So I saw this as an opportunity to be able to take this to the next level. Now, first thing, as always with many of these projects that we work on in product marketing, what's the first step you take? Talk to people. Listen carefully to what they are doing. And that's what I did. So who should you go to first? Salespeople, maybe? Product managers, right? Got to go talk to them first. No. Company leaders. Talk to your leadership team. This is something that's going to represent what they have been building as a company with their offerings and products. And you're giving them a tool that you can help to visualize what that is. So I would start here. So the first person that I talked to specifically at Akeneo was our chief product officer. And I also spoke to our CEO and other leaders as well. That's where I started, because I felt like if I could get their buy-in and alignment on the direction we need to go, things would be easier. It was then that I went to product managers and my team in product marketing and got more of the specific input and started to think and explore and brainstorm different approaches and what should be included and what should not be, and what was roadmap and what wasn't, and so on. So that was the next step I took. And then I went to sales leadership and some of the sales champions that I've been knowing and working with already to get more specific details about how do they present it? What do they want to present? And more importantly, who do they want to share this with? Your marketing teams. So you need to go and reach out to your leaders in marketing. So maybe it's demand gen, field marketing, content, and so on, because there are opportunities for them to be able to leverage what you produce here. And related to that, if you have a design team, whether that's internal or external, get them involved early. This is something that I did as well, because they will help explore how you're going to visualize the architecture ultimately and how it can be used. If you go down a path and start designing it yourself too late, and then design is coming in and making it pretty, you may find you'll actually start limiting yourself in the ways that can be used. So get them involved early to explore options about how it can be visualized and across different channels that you'll use it. Analysts and influencers. So you're going to start building a story around this. Test it with them. So this is something that we did earlier on before it went live. And we used the inquiry process and the strategy sessions to actually bounce this off an analyst and see what they thought. And we actually got really good feedback on things we were missing. So if you have an arrangement with one of the analyst firms, take advantage of it. Otherwise, there may be other influencers out there that you know of that you can tap into and just be like, hey, we're working on a new idea for same architecture if you want, or a new story or new visualization. Can I bounce it off you and get your feedback? Do that. You will find gaps that you didn't know were there. And then finally, and obviously, test it with your customers and partners. You've probably got some champions out there amongst your customer base or your partner base. Pick one or two of them and just test it off them, see what they think. I'm sure that they would love to be able to have that early view into it. So I got the feedback from lots of people. And from that, I was able to synthesize lots of ideas for where we wanted to go next with this architecture. And one of the key things was we needed something that we could present to business decision makers, as well as to a technical audience as well. And then, like I said, go into deeper analysis later on. But that was the key thing. This had to be something that a business side of the decision-making process could look at, and we could have a short or long or meaningful conversation that would inspire them to react positively in some way. It needed to incorporate customer goals as well. And so this is more than just about us and what we do. It really was centered around the customer and what they are trying to achieve, so that it illustrated visually as well as through storytelling that we had a solution for their pain points. Now, as well as the technology, we also wanted to include people and process within this visualization. Okay, now you're really giving me a challenge here. But as you'll see, we address this. This is a really important part. People don't buy technology for the sake of buying technology, if that's what I'm assuming many of you are in one way or another. But there's always people and process involved that needs to be taken into account. And so can you incorporate that in some way into what you do with part of your storytelling through architecture? It needs to be customizable, easily customizable, so that it was relevant to the audience and we didn't have a sea of icons that weren't relevant to them. It needed to be adaptable. Could this be something we could still use a year or two from now, even though our offerings may have changed? It had to be unique. It had to stand out in some way or another, whether that is calling out unique differentiators through the story and visualization, or it's just something that isn't out there today. It had to be centered around our vision too. We do have a vision, a compelling and strong one that the whole company is behind. So I wanted to reflect that within the architecture as well, because that should almost be really early on in the conversation, as if not coming back to it at the end. It had to drive conversations. I didn't want this to be slideware. I wanted this to actually spur questions for people to want to go deeper in certain areas and use it in a story arc as well. And it had to be simple enough for everyone to understand. One of my favorite sayings is from Einstein: make everything as simple as possible, but don't simplify. And that's so true with the architecture as well. So I started brainstorming. I started putting down ideas about how can we visualize this architecture. And yeah, I started with the classic diagrams, the stack diagram. You've seen that, right? I looked at different pie charts and segments and concentric circles and what have you, and nothing was really working for me. I needed some inspiration here. I needed something different because everybody else was doing this. And it just so happened that I had been really into reading about the history of the English royalty, especially medieval times. And so I was reading about the Tudors after the Plantagenet kings. And I saw this. This is the Tudor Rose. If you're not familiar with it, Henry Tudor, so King Henry VIII's father. He joined together two houses that were at war after the Plantagenet started to fall apart, House of Lancaster and House of York. They had two roses, one for each. One was red, one was white to represent them. When the two houses combined and England was unified under a new king, we got the Tudor Rose. And that's what you see here. And I went, okay, there's something here. So what I did was I went to a drawing board, almost literally. And another piece of advice to you is if you're trying to put together ideas from this, what tools you should use, question I often get, pen and paper, whether tree-based or digital-based. Start there. And this is an example of one of the sketches I started to put together. You can see my really badly drawn rose here. And it's starting to take shape here. I've got a little bit of the stack. I've got some concentric circles, and I've got the petals of a rose. It was a bit busy, but it was getting there. And I was testing this idea with some of those key people I talked about before as I was iterating through this to get their ideas and see if I was missing anything. So after all that, where did we land? What was the result? And if you haven't seen it yet, it looks like this. This is the Marchitecture that we've been using. And I want to call out a few different things here for you. Let's see if I can get my pointer going. All right, got a laser pointer right here. Cool. So a few things I want to point out to you. First of all, you see this PX, product experience is what it stands for. Our vision as a company is to help businesses with products to sell be able to unlock growth through product experiences. That's where we start the conversation. The next part of the conversation is right around it. New products, new markets, new channels. These are examples of kind of business goals that our customers have that we are looking to address. That's the next talking point. But then we go into people, process, data, and technology. This is something we call product experience management. So as you can see, I'm not talking about our offerings or products yet. I'm starting the conversation around the customer and the vision and what they need to put into place as a business. I then go into our technology in the purple circles that you see here. The difference, in case you're wondering, the lighter purple is more around capabilities. The darker purple is more of our platform. And that's product information management, the Akeneo PIM. We then have our connectors and add-ons around that. And a few of the other icons you'll see. I call out people who are involved in working with this particular technology in our core product, the PIM. IT, suppliers, internal teams, distributors and retailers, and of course, customers and shoppers. I've called them out. And the other ancillary technologies that work with our product, an ERP, a digital asset management system, e-commerce platform, the list goes on, as you can see. And I wanted to call out that we are investing in analytics and insights. So I'm talking about new capabilities as well as what we have on our roadmap, connecting all of this together. This is the roadmap that we built together. This can be delivered in 2 minutes like I just did. I've also had some feedback from others who said, wow, I actually spent 40 minutes talking through this. And I'm like, yeah, good. It could be a presentation in and of itself. To that point, let me just see if I can turn off my pointer here. Well, let me turn it off. There we go. So we actually turned this into a build that someone can click through as they're talking so that it is following a story arc, as you can see here. So this was another thing I wanted to make sure that our design could reflect. And that's why I worked with the design team earlier on. And it's thanks to them I was able to actually build this out. So this is another thing we do as part of our presentations. But I did get some feedback that said, this is great. This is like changing how they're talking to decision makers earlier on in the sales cycle. as well as elsewhere, like with analysts and so on. But could we have just a little bit more simpler version that could be just something that just summarizes this real quickly or could be used on the website? And so that's what we did. Based on that design, we created a simple abstracted version of that Marchitecture. And it's built in such a way that as this grows, we can adapt this very easily, say with more petals around it, for example. And we even gave our Marchitecture a name, Akeneo PXM Studio. Or if you like, we came up with Akeneo PXM Studio and we gave it a Marchitecture. Either way, it's something we can describe in terms of everything that we do. We also could create versions of that. So the one on the left here is a version of that design that focuses on our connections to other technologies out there and other systems, so that we can highlight certain areas so that people understand where we're focusing. Likewise, on the right, very much focusing on the analytics and insights capabilities of our products that we have. It's just this very simple design change that we could use to be able to reflect where we're talking about in terms of an agenda, let's say, or it could be for other things as well. All right, so that's the Marchitecture built. Was my work done? No, of course not. Time to put it into action. So where did we use this? So yes, in presentations that we have, our standard sales deck includes this. And one thing I'm going to tell you to do if you build a Marchitecture is put a script. Don't just create it and assume people will know how to talk through it. Create a script because it should reflect the story arc, and encourage people to tailor this according to their audience. So I've delivered this for customers, and I've actually put the specific technologies that they use in their current stack. If they don't call them suppliers and they call them something else, I put that in there. So everything in this is completely editable as well. We've used it on our website. So if you go to our website and you look for Akeneo PXM Studio from the menu, boom, there's your image right there that represents the Akeneo PXM Studio. And we even went as far as using this as part of a recent launch that we had. Rather than talking about releasing this product and this product and this update and this connection, we just created one single press release and called it Akeneo Launches PXM Studio, and used this as the sort of the focal point in word form to describe what we have. We've also used it in online events. So this is from our online conference earlier this spring. And right there in the background, as well as some handsome fellow over there in his basement that you can see on the right-hand side, there's on the, I don't know who that is. But over there, I'm joining my product manager, by the way, is the Marchitecture you can see on the screen behind us that we're using as part of this presentation that we gave at our online conference. There are other ways that you all could come up with, I'm sure, but these are some of the ways that we applied this. More importantly, not just where, but why, because these are all things that I can track and I can actually see what impact the work we have been doing on the Marchitecture is having on our business directly or indirectly. So what's next? Can we go further? So there's more that we can do. I'm not done. First of all, I want to be able to create a whiteboarded version of this. So we focused on the presentation and the visual image. I've done it myself, but I want to make sure others are enabled that they could actually whiteboard this thing if they wanted to. So that's one thing we're going to work on next. And that means, yeah, and if any of my salespeople are watching, sorry, we are working on a certification for this so that people can actually test themselves in a safe environment and validate that this is a story that they can give in a compelling way. We want to use this in videos. So you've seen some of the animation aspects that we can have and how it's sort of like that map representation. So videos and video stinger animations is something we're considering as well. And we're also considering this as using it as a map towards the training curricula that we have so that you get a visual representation of where you need to go to learn about everything that we do. And then it's just looking to see what's coming next and adapting it accordingly in our offering that we have on our roadmap. So what can I leave you with? What thoughts can I have? Basically, building and launching a Marchitecture successfully for your business is a journey. There's no destination here. And as you've already seen with us, we're continuing this work. You're never quite done with this, and nor should you be. So key things for you to take away from that as you go on that journey. Marchitecture is something that represents not only what you do and maybe how, but the most important thing is why. And yes, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, so Start with why is my recommendation. And then this is actually the title for a book that I want to read. It's called Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins. This is so true. Marchitectures are not a visual thing and be done with. They are storytelling devices. Irrespective of who you tell that story to, if it's the right audience for you and for them, adapt it accordingly so that the story is compelling and relevant for them to say, yeah, you know what? I want to find out more. And then as product marketing, this is one of those projects where you can be the captain of the journey. You want to find out how product marketing can be more strategic in your organization? Right here. This is one way to do it. But your challenge is you need to just collect their input, but also get them aligned so that they're all using it and understand it as well. That's going to be your toughest challenge, but it's going to be the most rewarding when you figure it out. So this way, when you get to build your own Sagrada Familia, it's not going to feel like you're going to have to hand it over to someone else because it will never get done and you'll never see its daylight. That's not true. You'll be able to see a version of this and you'll see the fruits of it, and you'll be able to hand this off and see it evolve over time and just become this beautiful thing that will represent your company, your customers and your partners and everything that you do and why. So I hope that was insightful. I hope I gave you some good suggestions as well. Wish I could spend more time on this, but Rose, I'm going to hand it over to you to close it up, please.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ali. There are so many great positive notes that people are taking from this and great bits of feedback in the comments section. So I definitely recommend hopping on over and checking that out. We're going to rattle through a few quick questions.
Yeah, just one or two real quick.
So first one is noted that it was interesting that customers and partners were the last ones that you shared this with. And what was the reasoning behind that?
So I wouldn't say that they were literally last. To me, that was always, it was the obvious one as a product marketer that I knew I was going to do at some point. But I will say I did them a little bit later because I needed something for them to reflect on, react to. So I didn't want to get it too early because if I went in early and blank, they may not have been like, well, what's a Marchitecture? What are you trying to do here? I'm not sure. But if they saw this in a little bit, I would say closer to final, then they would understand and they would actually help me fill in their blanks.
Great. And then do you have any recommendations on whether you should build your actual Marchitecture with animations or is it better to be flat?
I'm going to answer it in a typical marketing way. It depends. No, here's my suggestion. Go with both. Start with both. I started flat originally. That's what we built towards, but with a view to, can we animate this rather than the other way around?
Yep.
That's what I recommend you do as well. Start with envisioning what does it look like flat so that it's clear, because it's just someone just saw it on a screen, would they get it? But keep in mind, okay, could we animate this? Animation may not work. It just depends on which direction you go.
Some good advice. And last but not least, just as a guesstimate, how long did it take you to create this? And also how long did it take your organization to agree to it?
Okay, the first question I was anticipating. The second part I was not. That's a good one. All right. Did it in a weekend? No, of course not. Really, from the moment, like, just sort of, let's do this, to actually launching it was 6 months. Now, did I take 6 months to build it? No, probably about 3 months, because we actually waited until we had an event to bring it to market. So really more like 3 to 4 months. End to end. What was the second one again about how long did it take? Your
organization to agree to it.
I don't know how long, but it felt quick. So before we went live, we did actually roll it out through internal webinars and things like that and training and different materials. And it was received really well. And the reason being, because I got the company leadership behind it.
Mm-hmm. That was your tip early on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, definitely hop on over to the chat because there's more comments and feedback. But yeah, really, thank you so much. That was an awesome session.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rose and PMA team. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll see you online and around soon. Take care and stay safe, everybody.
Your customers are your best spokespeople. so you want to make sure your prospects hear what they have to say. After all, trusted endorsements can drive faster sales cycles and boost marketing conversions, which helps you unlock faster growth. But when it comes to going on the record, even your best customers can go silent, and who can blame them? Partnering on case studies is time-consuming, and it's painful to work through the legal approvals often required. Luckily, there's another way. With Tech Validate by SurveyMonkey, you can easily capture feedback from satisfied customers and transform it into powerful content, like verified case studies, testimonials, and reviews. Want charts that show ROI, cost savings, or competitive differentiation? You got it. With our platform, you'll quickly build an arsenal of highly targeted social proof points, segmented by industry, company size, or buyer persona. You'll get the tools to easily deploy your new customer evidence into top marketing channels and put it in front of your sales team to share with prospects. Plus, there's no need to wait for legal for approvals. With Tech Validate, your customers can opt to share their name or provide testimonials anonymously, with all customer evidence validated by a trusted third party. That's why hundreds of companies, big and small, use Tech Validate to get social proof at scale. Ready to see how it works? Watch our product tour today.
You're playing a huge role in making the 2021 PMA Product Marketing Festival a success, and we can't thank you enough for being here. I'm Erik Mansur, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, and your host for Day 2 of this epic event. We've got a one-of-a-kind presentation coming up next, as it dives deep into a topic that we haven't talked nearly enough about: enabling your sales team to sell more stuff. People in the product marketing space throw around the phrase sales enablement quite a bit, and it's almost become an umbrella term for delivering information and collateral to your account executives. In fact, one would argue that competitive intelligence could sit beneath that umbrella, but we at Crayon would disagree. Sales enablement isn't just about making sure your top sales guy has access to a competitor's battle card. It's about ensuring your AEs are best equipped to drive more revenue in the most efficient way possible. What role can product marketing play in increasing the value of an enterprise sale? How can you get involved in creating a sales environment that delivers more cross-sell and upsell ROI? Well, you're about to get the answers to both of those questions in our next talk. You may be leaving opportunities on the table, a joint go-to-market approach for integrated enterprise tech solutions. A senior product marketing manager at IBM, please welcome Sola Ogunsola.
Clue is a competitive enablement platform that collects and delivers intelligence across every department of every business. Clue organizes intel into cards, delivering competitive insights across the tools and devices your teams already use. Enablement teams also get superpowers, allowing them to collect intel from millions of sources outside your organization, as well as internal sources like Salesforce, Slack, and company emails. Clue allows them to go deeper and cover more competitors without any extra hires or late nights for the team. Collect, curate, compete. Clue. Competitive enablement for the modern enterprise.
Thank you all so much for your time today, and thank you for joining in. It is such a great pleasure and a privilege to be a part of and to learn from this rich and vibrant community. I am happy to be spending the next 20 to 25 minutes with you all discussing a go-to-market approach for enterprise technology solutions organizations. Before I start, I do want to level set that this session will not focus on traditional go-to-market processes and steps and strategies as we know it. What I mean by that is I will not be spending a lot of time covering establishing the market segment, understanding the persona, building a buyer's journey, or even templates and tactics to build in messaging. However, what the session will focus on is, with a large enterprise lens, is focus on areas where we might have opportunities within the go-to-market process to be more efficient and to enhance our processes and strategies in a way to maximize value and scale growth. Whether that's increasing value and marketing message to our customers in a way that's consistent across our product portfolios and our organization, or whether that's in delivering value through increasing the value of our sale, where our sellers can meet our customers where they are while increasing the value of our organization's goals and revenue. Go-to-market is such a standard practice of product marketing. There are lots of moving parts. There are lots of moving parties across our organization. And that nuance is almost more exponential and complex within a large organization with various product portfolios. So in order to bring these kinds of solutions and products to market within such organizations, it is important that we take what we know within the go-to-market processes and apply a layer of methodical planning and execution to enable us to scale growth. But before we get into any of those exciting things, let me first introduce myself. I am a senior product marketing manager at IBM. I lead our IBM Z product marketing portfolio. And for those of you who don't know what IBM Z is an enterprise computing platform that powers economies. We support many different industries, from the finance sector to banking to even government. I started out my career at IBM many, many years ago as a semiconductor development engineer. I found that field to be very fascinating, but very quickly realized that building depth into technology required a siloed life that I was not built for. As such, I pursued an MBA and switched tracks to marketing. I have over 8 years of marketing experience, a lot of which has been spent in the consumer industry, driving marketing and brand efforts across the personal care and beauty categories for companies such as Colgate-Palmolive and Helen of Troy. I am now back at IBM as a product marketer. I guess you can see that I've come full circle. I love it at IBM. Great people doing what I love with great innovation and technology, and there isn't much more I can ask for. So I guess two fun things about myself. The first is that I am very connections and executions oriented and driven. So part of my goal as a product marketer is always to break down silos wherever I find myself. Second, I'm an artist and an avid DIYer, and I endeavor in my everyday life to bring creativity to all the things that I do, including the work that I do. So why are we here? As I said earlier, I will be focusing on parts of the process that we can refine and enhance to enable us to hack and scale for growth across marketing and sales. Plain and simple, drive and go-to-market efforts across multiple products, solutions, multiple different teams, business units, organizations, cross-functional teams is very difficult. What I have observed in my experience is that we as product marketers spend a lot of time driving go-to-market efforts. And even with the most guidance strategy, sometimes it may feel that we're running fast without really getting anywhere. So, understanding that challenge, I want to explore with us all today some external driving forces that we need to understand from the market and that should inform us in how we approach our go-to-market strategies. 2, we will explore internal barriers that we need to be aware of and cognizant of to be able to better navigate and align within our own organizations. And lastly, I will provide some guidelines and approaches that I've worked in my experience that might help us as we approach our go-to-market in a different light. Of course, the product marketer in me has to approach this from a needs to be solved standpoint. So here's the kicker. You're bringing a product to market, but how do you ensure proper end-to-end and strategic alignment across all those parties that we explained before? Avoiding and not preparing can lead to one or two things. First is we lead our customers down a pain point where they feel confused about our solutions and they feel confused about the messaging that we're putting forth. In an organization with many product portfolios, with different teams managing every portfolio and different cross-functional teams responsible for different parts of those portfolios, how do we prevent our customers from feeling a different message and a different person as they move through the organization? 2, how do we make sure we properly enable sales to maximize and increase the value of a sale? What opportunities can we uncover through insights that we might have as we align across the organizations to help sales hack for growth? First, let's explore those external barriers that I explained earlier. The short is the business buying pattern is evolving. Here's a quote from Brett Adamson, Distinguished VP and Advisory at Gartner. As hard as it has become to sell in today's world, it has become that much more difficult to buy. The single biggest challenge of selling today is not selling. It is actually our customers struggling to buy. Plain and simple, the lack of time with buyers, with rapidly shifting buying patterns that are being fueled by the digital buying behavior, is reshaping the strategic focus of many marketing and sales organizations. Sellers have little opportunities to influence the customer decisions. This is due to the ease that our buyers have of obtaining quality information through digital channels. It has made it easier for them to gather information independently, meaning that sales has less time to access and fewer opportunities to influence. In fact, Gartner research finds that when B2B buyers are considering a purchase, they spend only 17% of that time meeting with potential suppliers. When buyers are comparing multiple suppliers, the amount of time spent with any one sales rep is around 5 to 6%. Even for us as marketers, what this means is getting our messaging across in a quick and compelling way, and ensuring a seamless transition as our buyers and customers go from digital to sales. All of this in effort to guide our customers in making their decisions with confidence while minimizing uncertainty. With this backdrop in mind, I do also want to point out that the buying journey is much complex and isn't as linear as we may think. Customers engage in a continual process of identifying a need and exploring solutions that they feel might solve those needs. They're doing this all while validating and aligning with their very complex buying teams on what vendor and what solution to move forward with. So with this said, I think it's important to understand some internal barriers that we may have as well. And then we'll switch gears to how might we address our go-to-market strategies with these information in hand. Shifting gears to the internal roadblocks. There are 2 things I'd like to cover here. In large enterprises, or in any enterprise or company or organization for that matter, there are various product portfolios that often are managed by different teams, different business units, different marketing teams, different seller teams. Rallying across these different teams can be very challenging. 2 factors are at the root cause of what inhibits us to efficiently collaborate across. One is in how we're measured. Tell me how you measure, and I'll tell you how I'll behave. Oftentimes, metrics differ at every layer of an organization from corporate to business unit. Second is where the magic happens, at the heart of the collaboration itself. Finding the right integration point and finding the right value add across requires collaboration. But the question is, are we wired for it? This is a lesson taken out of a book, Rock, Paper, Scissors, Game Theory of Everyday Life by Lens Fisher. It talks about the idea of, unlike ants and bees, we as humans aren't wired for cooperation. We tend to act out in self-interest. And this inclination repeatedly draws us to social dilemmas where we try to gain more for ourselves, but we would fare off better if we collaborated in a cooperative way. So where do we go from here? The first thing I have to offer to you today is that we as product marketers have to efficiently navigate the buying journey. Conceptualizing what you see here, the stages of the buyer's journey. First is the awareness stage, where we understand the customer's interest around a particular need and perhaps options that they could consider for solving those needs. Second is the consideration stage, where we understand the customer's decision and what is most valuable for them to make those decisions. And lastly is a decision stage, is where we would understand how customers would use and deploy whatever solutions and what they would do next, what they're likely to do next. As already noted, the B2B buying doesn't play out in any kind of predictable or linear order as you see here. Customers engage in a continuous manner across these stages, so more or less simultaneously as opposed to sequentially. Two things to double click into around efficiently navigating the buying journey is product alignment and message alignment. Tightly collaborating across these two areas will inform a better strategy to help deliver value across the buyer's journey. First, let's take a look at what it means to align efficiently and strategically across our products. If you do not have an intimate understanding of your buyers, it may be difficult for you to lay out a buyer's journey in a way that will be helpful from a messaging standpoint all the way down to sales execution. In a similar fashion, if you don't have an intimate understanding of your product, it may also be difficult for you to deliver value in that buyer's journey. The reason for this is that as product marketers, we are the voice of the customers to the product, and vice versa. We are also the voice of the product to the customer. We need to be experts in problem identification for our customers, as well as matching those problems to the right solutions or the right sets of products that can solution those needs. How might we figure this out? In the complex world of multiple products, multiple data, multiple buyers, analytics can help. It can help reveal patterns and insights to help improve where those synergies are, where those right integration points are, and most importantly, where the right opportunities are to scale growth and deliver value in sale. I want to spend some time first talking about intent data, which is incredibly useful in helping sellers to narrow down the field. There are two types of intent data, but before I get into that, just a quick understanding on what it is. Intent data is behavioral information that's collected about any individual or organization about their activity. Combining topic and context data allows us to understand what the individual is likely to do next or buy next. There are two types of intent data. I'll talk about the first, which is first-party intent data. You all in your organizations have super valuable data, whether that's through your website or engagement with your assets that your customers currently have today. This can also be buying data. Many organizations have data around version, currency that their customers may be, adoption trends that customers may have. These are rich internal first-party data that we can mine today for additional insights to help us uncover where additional value might be as we strategically build our go-to-market processes. Third-party intent data is different in the sense that it is sourced from independent review sites such as G2 Crowd or corporative content websites such as Bombora. The sweet spot from an insights engine standpoint is an integration of both first-party and third-party intent data. Combining these types of data and aggregating them can provide a robust insight engine to inform our go-to-market strategies. But the idea here is not to run before we crawl. Start small. Start with your first-party intent data. What insights can be revealed in terms of where your customers are today? What additional insights can you uncover in terms of what their digital activities are? And bring those to the forefront as you strategically plan for go-to-market. The second example I have here is more of a sophisticated analytical example. It is called a path to lifetime value analysis. It is a data science solution that focuses on expanding single purchasers and existing accounts and tailoring product recommendations to increase their lifetime value and synergy with marketing and sales. The model helps to understand products customers who have purchased the starting product are likely to purchase next. So in the illustration that you see here, there's a starting product that customers have purchased. And based on buying patterns after purchasing, it calculates a likelihood that that customer will purchase another set of product in another product family. As you can imagine, this reveals a customer's journey pattern in terms of their wants and needs. It reveals opportunities to fulfill the customer's needs while allowing us to increase the value of our sale. The second part of navigating the buyer's journey efficiently is messaging alignment. We have established that in today's B2B world, there is no baton handoff from marketing to sales or digital to in-person. It is a parallel process, not a serial one. As such, we need to enable every stakeholder at every point of the journey to deliver the right message in the same consistent way to our customers. Oftentimes, sales is not a function that we think of when crafting our messaging and positioning, but it is critical that we bring them along to establish mindshare and to empower them to deliver a consistent message. Think about it. The mother lode of execution is what we say to customers. That is the crux of our execution. We established at the top of the session that we do not want to create a pain point where our customers feel a different message and a different voice as they move through our organizations. Crafting and aligning messaging across the different teams allows us to have this one cohesive and consistent voice to come to the customer with. What this could look like is this very simple metrics that I have on the right, where we establish an overarching strategy and an overarching message. And we put sales at the table to derive tangible sales motion that can enable our sellers to go out and make the call out to our customers to get them engaged in a way that ties back to that overarching message. And then at the very granular level, it's those relevant products that tie together the credibility and the capabilities that we have to deliver on those sales motions and the message that we're delivering to customers. Consistency is key here. Let us not ship our organizational charge by creating different voices and messages across the organization. I don't think I would be staying true to my commitment of breaking down silos without this final point of overcoming the innate apprehension to build a winning value prop. We talked earlier about Len Fisher's book of game theory in everyday life and how we as humans are not wired for collaboration. However, it is essential to our success. It is essential to how we execute. Continuing the lessons from that book, Len Fisher shares that businesses' teams are nothing but federations of human beings. We like to think that we're different and unique, and we behave in ways to protect and promote those uniqueness. However, we need to overcome the apprehensions that we have to build win and value propositions. We need to rally the teams without fear. We need to create joint goals that deliver joint value across every stakeholder and across every organization that's involved. We need to do this by finding out what the other team's goals are, and we need to align those goals under overarching strategy and metrics that enable us to be jointly accountable. So in case you missed it, go-to-market is already hard in and of itself. Doing it across a large enterprise and across various product portfolios can be very challenging. It is nothing new from what we know from the regular go-to-market process. It is just applying a layer of planning and execution that allows us to effectively collaborate and apply certain tools to understand where the biggest value lie. Ultimately, the most important person here is the customer. We want to eliminate the pain point of shipping our organization across our messaging and across every touch point that we have with them. We want to enhance the value of the buyer's journey by enabling them to make their decisions with confidence while minimizing uncertainty. The buying journey isn't linear. This is a repetitive and a cyclical process. We need to navigate this buying journey efficiently. We need to bring sales and the rest of our ecosystem along, support customer service managers, so that we all have a seat at the table to deliver our message in a consistent way. Collaboration is the sweet spot and often where the magic happens. Let us overcome our apprehensions. Let us create joint value and joint goal that will deliver much needed value for our customers as well as for our organizations. I thank you all so much for your time today. You can reach me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to drop me an email if you have any question. And thank you.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind, helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real-life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
You're just about halfway through the epic Day 2 of the 2021 PMA Product Marketing Festival. I'm Erik Mansur, your host for the day's events and the VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, a market and competitive intelligence software company. Pricing, pricing, pricing. Just the mere mention of the word can send shivers down the spine of the average product marketer for more than a few reasons. One, it's a skill you might use infrequently, so you're almost always out of practice. 2, if you mess it up, it could lead to things like an overtaxed supply chain, leaving way too much value on the table, or, a little thing like a massive loss in company revenue and productivity in trying to fix it. Pricing is almost always on the minds of our customers here at Crayon, who use our software to keep track of how their competitors are going to market in real time. Any changes in the pricing page on your competitor's website? Our software uses advanced machine learning to catch it nearly the moment that it happens and flag that piece of critical intel to your team. But what about the other side of pricing? Doing it yourself for your own organization. That's the topic of our next presentation, Pricing 101 for a Product Marketer. You're going to want to grab your notebooks for this talk from the guy who's in charge of SaaS pricing and go-to-market for VMware, Sagar Thakur.
Folks, I am absolutely excited and thrilled to be here with you all at the Product Marketing Festival as one of the only pricing speakers in the lineup. So exciting. So I wanted to thank the organizing team first for having me, and obviously all of you audience members for joining in and being with me for the next 20-25 minutes as I walk through some learnings, insights, experiences from being in the area of pricing for the last 5 years or so. I don't claim to be an expert. I learned from a lot of people, including some of the best in the industry. So I'll try and distill down some of that insights into themes that will hopefully help you be a little more educated about pricing if you aren't already in understanding this space. So I have a ton of content to cover. So without further ado, let's dig in. All right, very quickly, a little bit about myself. So I've been, as I said, being in the pricing space and working on go-to-market projects for enterprise software vendors for the last 5 years or so. Prior to that, I do have some sales experience. So that gives me a little bit of seller empathy as I approach this topic. One of the reasons I love pricing, it gives me a 360-degree view of the business. I would argue there is no other function. Probably product marketing comes pretty close in terms of being at the heart, the center of the company, and having a ripple effect throughout the company on whatever you do. And so, I love being in that area and being that impactful from a pricing perspective. At a personal level, I do enjoy playing music, but a lot of my time these days is spent being a first-time dad, where I'm learning every week on being a better person, as well as take care of the child and helping my wife out. All right, who is this talk for? Well, the talk is for PMMs who either fall in one of those three buckets. So one, you don't really work on pricing, but do want to learn more. You want to keep yourself abreast and updated. Second, you do get involved in pricing from time to time for various reasons. Maybe you own a particular product or service and its product marketing activities, and as part of that decision-making play a role. Or you have started to take ownership of pricing as part of your group. And I have been extremely fortunate to start my pricing career in a product marketing organization, which was an extremely enriching experience. And I believe it's the right place to start. And so what do I want to cover as part of the next 20 minutes or so is basically distilling down to 5 key themes and drilling a little deeper into each one of them. Let's dive in. All right, let's kick it off by what those themes are. Number one, knowing the lay of the land. This is extremely crucial from a pricing perspective. Pricing strikes to the heart of the company. And so there's a lot of stakeholders who have skin in the game. And so knowing how to navigate the complexities and vagaries of your organization and its decision-making around pricing will help you be more successful as you make changes. Number two, understanding that price is not about just price. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. It's the entire equation. Understanding both sides of the coin will help you paint the big picture and then craft appropriate strategies to be successful. Number three, software pricing is not just pricing. It's pricing, it's packaging, it's licensing, it's contractual terms, it's terms and conditions, and all of them put together. So understanding the different levers that you have to pull and then being able to coherently pull them together is what will make you successful. So that's theme number three. Theme number four, this is something that product marketers will be extremely sensitive to, and that is very important to them, being able to communicate value messaging, positioning. And so how do you communicate your way to success from a pricing perspective? We'll dig into that in theme four. And then the last theme is, how do you bring a product mentality to pricing? That thought process where you're being iterative and trying to move the needle, and it's never 100% done. So we'll get into that a little bit. All right, let's begin. Theme number one, knowing the lay of the land. Probably my favorite theme of all the 5 themes, and the most critical before you even get started. Now, decision-making in organizations from a pricing perspective can go in many different directions. And I've seen various decisions being made in various different ways, where afterward you're sort of scratching your head and saying, how did we even get here? And this particular sort of cartoon stuck at the heart of it, where you're making a decision and someone's questioning, well, was alcohol involved in making that decision? And so, let's figure out what questions to ask to understand what the lay of the land is, right? And one thing I will mention before kicking in here is the reason this is important is that a lot depends on your organizational context, because there is no one-size-fits-all approach from a pricing perspective. Do you have a product-led motion or a sales-led motion? Is your product technically complex, or is it sort of simple, easy, install and use? In terms of, are you a startup? Are you a large established company? Have you had a pricing person, or have you not? Have you been around for 5 years? Have you been around for 30 years? Is your product portfolio simple or complex with multiple products? A lot of these factors go in to figuring out what the right approaches should be. So your step number 0 should be to understand the nature of the beast inside the company. And how do you do that? By asking some key questions. Question number 1, who is involved in the decision-making process? When are decisions made? Is it a seasonal activity? Is it something ongoing? This is the most important. How are decisions being made? Is there a set of rules that governing how you will approach pricing decisions? Or is it sort of some tribal knowledge that everyone's using? And lastly, how is success measured? So let's get some specific questions out here, right? So from a who perspective, is it a decision managed by a committee? Does it have a dedicated owner or some part-time owners? Who has skin in the game? Obviously, product, sales, finance are key, but who else is involved from a leadership perspective? Very important, when are decisions made? Is it just in time, right before a product launch, or is it a proactive approach, right? When you're sort of in the product conceptualization stage? Is it looked at as if it's a seasonal activity, where you have to evaluate something every year, or is it sort of more ongoing or more frequent? Is it iterative, or is it once and done, where you put something out there and you sort of move on to the next thing? The most important amongst all these questions, how? Are there some shared principles that have been involved, or some tribal knowledge that is being used to guide decisions? Or maybe there isn't. Is there some prioritization list that you're going through? And probably the most important point of all, what biases and emotions are governing those decisions? I've seen this countlessly across companies, where maybe there's a recency bias, where you hired a new executive and he said, well, this is how Microsoft does it, we should do it this way. Or is there something stemming from the founder of the company himself? He or she has a view about pricing, and that's sort of stemming through. Is there a core product bias? Sometimes you have a core product that's extremely successful, and so it has a pricing approach, and you assume that's worked as well. And so you assume everything else you launch also has to mirror that approach to be successful. Or has your organization have had sort of never again moments? Maybe you made a change, it was an error, and then you sort of went back and sort of decided never again will we do that, and sort of now have this fear in your mind, right? And lastly, how is success measured? Is it about the total revenue? Is it about how price is being realized? Is the focus on acquisition? Is the focus on retention? Is the goal to sort of understand customer perceptions and manage around that? Or what about the feedback that your sales team bring, and how is that valued inside the company? All of these questions and asking these questions will help you understand what the lay of the land is. And before you make your move in terms of recommending a change or making a business case, this will help you navigate. All right. Some data to support this. This is from a product pragmatic marketing survey from maybe a couple of years ago. A couple of pointers here. You can see then in terms of when was the price first put on the product, not until right before the release, 45%. That is a staggeringly high number. And then in terms of how did the final price compare to the price in the business plan, 33% price stayed the same, which tells me what was the iteration done in subsequent time when the product was put out in the market. So this gives you a little bit of lay of the land, and you may not be alone. But again, organizations can be extremely mature as well, where you can start thinking about pricing even before designing the solution, or even before development has started. Okay, so now once you understand the lay of the land, now you have to understand the nature of the beast from a pricing perspective. So one of the important themes here, and this is, I believe, a quote from Warren Buffett: price is what you pay, value is what you get. There are two sides to the coin. You need to understand both sides to be successful. And so let me put out a framework here that will help sort of put some concreteness around this, right? So first piece of this is value management. There's potential value that is to be created for the customer. There's actual value that's created by your service. And there's obviously a value creation gap there. And the most important step, there's some actual value and there's some perceived value from a specific customer segment. And that gap is typically bridged from a value communication perspective. And if you don't communicate well, there's a gap between actual and perceived value. And to understand how to capture all this value comes the pricing pieces. How do you create a pricing structure that will be able to capture this value scalably and profitably? What about pricing policies in terms of dealing with individual customers and how to influence their willingness to pay? What about setting price levels? Are you going to set price levels that are very aggressive sort of tone where you can capture a broader share of the market, or are you going to take a more premium approach? And what about reacting to competition? What if a competitor shows up and is starting to do a land grab with some extremely low prices? How do you react to that? And so value and price, you need to understand both in order to be a more proactive and sustainable strategy, right? And so you got to measure value, you got to measure pricing, and rinse and repeat as you try and move along the life cycle of a company. Let's spend maybe a minute about understanding what this term value really means, and specifically what the role that you have to play in terms of translating the value proposition of your product or service into a dollar economic value per customer segment, and trying to manage and maintain that over time to guide some of your pricing decisions. So in terms of defining, there's economic value, so that's a dollar value. There's psychological value, believe it or not, in B2B as well, where you think about, how does your product reduce anxiety? You also think about value just not from what the service does, but all touch points across the organization. So how is your customer experience from a, let's say, a customer success point of view? You also think about value in use from a software perspective. What jobs are done using your software? In terms of measuring economic value, there's a few different ways. From a software perspective, you end up impacting either the cost, revenue, compliance, or risk management from a customer perspective. And so you can go in those dimensions and try to quantify value. Value, again, is specific to a customer cohort or profile. It depends on which customer you're talking about. And value is always about differential value. You evaluate versus the next best alternate. It's never about, hey, I created $100,000 of value for the customer. It's about, hey, the customer had an alternate, and what about that? So you have to count the differential value. So let's take a very quick and dirty example, and you can all build sort of value models for your product and service in more depth, right? So assume you have a data cleansing service that saves 50 to 200 hours of data scientist time every year. And so let's say a data scientist costs $300 an hour. You translate that to the hours, multiply that by the hours saved, and you're looking at, roughly 15 to 60K thousand dollars of savings per year. Now, obviously, this doesn't take into account alternates. There might be customer alternates that might reduce that number. And then let's say the cherry on top is reduce anxiety. Your data scientists are happy building predictive models than trying to clean data, right? So this is a quick and dirty example of how you can look at a range of value and then validate that across your customer base by taking some sample qualitative interviews and then understanding what that value looks like. Remember, it's easier to have a value conversation with your customer when you're interviewing them than having a pricing conversation or trying to understand what price they will pay. So first, sort of throwing light on the value piece is going to serve you well as you start to get into the pricing piece. All right, theme number 3. We've spoken about value. What about the other side of the equation? Now, software pricing is not just pricing, as I mentioned. It's multiple pieces. And I'll use this DocuSign pricing page as an example, right? So you look at different elements on this page. You look at licensing. You're counting per user. Are you counting activity? Are you counting spend? Obviously, in this particular example, you're counting users as your licensing metric. That is key. Remember, in intellectual property pricing or software pricing, you can count anything. And so choosing that value metric is key when it comes to pricing and packaging. Element number 2, packages. You see here 3 packages that are on the screen, and then the 4th package for you have to call the vendor. These are functional packages, and there's a reason they're there. They're either here to address different segments. They're either here to maybe map to a value path. Maybe you start as a standard user and upgrade to a business pro at the appropriate time as you grow in deriving value from this product. And so these packages are certain sort of serving specific purposes here. And so your job is to work with the product manager, understand the roadmap, and understand which features and functions are fitting into each of these packages, and how do you evolve that over time to sort of sustainably capture value. And obviously the final piece, pricing. What are the dollar numbers on each of them? $10, $25, $40. What price points do you put? How do you evaluate them? How do these price points change based on, let's say, how many users are you buying? What about annual versus monthly billing? What about committing for 1 year or 3 year? And so you get to set all of these numbers to influence and capture value from a pricing perspective. And then last but not the least, there's the contract level in terms of, hey, are you offering a price lock? What about renewal price guarantees? There's so many terms and conditions that you have to take into account, especially when you're dealing with a large B2B buyer. And so the key takeaway here is that there's multiple connected levers to pull. Licensing, packaging, pricing brought together is your offer. And so when you create a good offer, when you have evaluated each of these levers correctly and put together a good offer, it'll help you be more successful. I'll share a litmus test to evaluate sort of the strength or weaknesses of your particular pricing model. And so this will help you understand the trade-offs involved in making a decision to create a model. So let's play out all of them, right? So there's a number of criteria. Let me stress upon a few of them. Number 1, does it create what's called a taximeter effect? Remember those days when cell phones used to be charged or cell service used to be charged per minute? I was always looking at how many minutes I've used and created this effect where I wanted to cut the call early. So does your metric do that? Does your model do that? Does it stifle increased use? It's one of the important considerations when creating a model. Number 2, is it sort of from an experience perspective, visible, trackable, manageable? What if the customer doesn't even know how to estimate requirements, or you haven't given them tools to estimate requirements? That leads to a terrible experience and customers are unhappy. What about scaling? Does your model work for a customer with 10 users? And does it scale up to, let's say, a customer with 10,000 users or 100,000 users or even 1 million users? Does your model scale across the board there from a capability perspective, packaging, pricing, licensing, all metrics? So whenever you're evaluating a model, keep some of these criteria in mind as you evaluate, and it will help you understand the trade-offs involved. Now, great organizations are able to succeed on a lot of these criteria, and be more successful in the marketplace. And so your job is to evaluate those trade-offs and understand what works for you. Let's look at a couple of very, very quick examples. Two examples here, or rather one example with two options. This is a printing service, HP. They used to sell on a per cartridge basis. You go to the shop, pick up a black and white or a color cartridge. There's a fixed quantity of ink in that particular box. And now the subscription service is pages per month. So the question to think about it is basically, what is more connected to value? Are you, from a consumer perspective, do you think about value in terms of number of pages that you print? And you think that's more fair? Or do you think it was more sort of simple to buy cartridges? Well, I would argue that it's pages per month is so better connected from a value perspective. I don't have to worry about black or white. If I make some errors or maybe there's some garbage printing, HP can sort of give me back pages back in my account. So there's so much more flexibility and better customer experience. Similar example. Think about an example like a digital contract system, like a DocuSign or an Adobe. Should they charge per user, or should they charge for every document, envelope, or contract that they sign? Again, this will depend on a segmentation perspective. If you're a real estate segment, maybe every contract is important and you're happy with this model. Or maybe in another area, in another segment where the per user model might make sense. So it might vary per segment. So you have to break down all of these different options and make the right choice for you. Okay, take a quick pause here. We've looked at sort of knowing the lay of the land. We've talked about value. We've talked about price structures from a software perspective. And here's where this is probably the most important from a PMM perspective, where you can have an immediate and direct influence and impact from a pricing perspective. Now, you have to communicate your way to success. And what I mean by that is when you're thinking about pricing as your product, you're also thinking about how to communicate the value of the model itself. What are its strengths? What are the weaknesses? So one of the themes that I'll talk about here is to help reduce the risk discount. And what I mean by that is when buyers are buying your software, if they will perceive risk, if they don't understand the model, if they don't understand the product, they will perceive risk. And then therefore they may say, well, I'm not going to really value this at the number that you're telling me to. From a seller perspective, if your sales team doesn't understand the pricing model, they won't sell. Maybe they'll sell other products of the model that they do understand. And so there is this risk discount idea where the seller is forced to reduce price because your buyer is perceiving risk, right? And how do you mitigate this? Communication. It's internal communication and enabling sales. And these could be done in methods of explaining how the model works. Tools to size accounts. Can sellers help customers estimate requirements so that the level of risk is reduced? Do you have messaging to defend the model? What if your buyer comes back and says, hey, this other competitor is offering me this model and it doesn't constrain me in XYZ ways? Well, you need to arm your salespeople to have those insights of the benefits of your model. What are the things that it is sort of better at versus competitor models? And then there's customer facing. Do you have blogs or white papers that explain the benefits of your model? And how does that link with the product? Does your pricing model link with the value message and the branding of your entire product or service? And then are you able to explain the philosophy behind the model and also share some customer success stories of how the model worked for specific customers? So let's walk through a few examples and see how companies have done this successfully. Here's an example of App Dynamics. It's one of the APM application performance management tools. So when they rolled out a different pricing model, they put out a blog talking about digital transformation and how this pricing model will help them make the buying process much easier. They also linked in their title the final objective, taming the challenge of digital transformation. And so they're communicating that this new model will help you achieve that goal along with the product itself. Another excellent example, this was Splunk rolling out new pricing. And so they rebranded their platform as data to everything. And so you look at how they didn't just make the change on the product and the branding side, but they also connected it to pricing and rolled out some new pricing approaches that'll help consume their service much better. And so they branded it as data to everything pricing. So it connected the platform brand to the pricing model itself. And they put the message out there that this is flexible offerings, make it easy to bring data to every question. And so this is sort of the integrated messaging that you're looking at and also communicating the offerings and the pricing model benefits. Another sort of startup solution here. They talk about stopping to pay by per user or per seat, which doesn't work for many different services, and switching to sort of unlimited sends and users. And they didn't want to limit that. And so how did they communicate? They put out a post and they said, we'll call out key brands to illustrate the philosophy of a platform-based pricing model. So they call these brands out: HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, Eloco. Why are they not doing this? And here's why we align with this, and drawing that analogy from shifting to a manual to a digital world. Last couple of examples: Power BI, they link their pricing model to the new economic disruption that enables data culture everywhere. So they're tying the pricing model to the product narrative about democratizing essentially the business intelligence capabilities across the organization. And they're talking about pricing being as disruptive as the product. And TurboTax, look at this, helping choose the right offer for the customers. They have this selection tool. You pick the kind of things that you did in a year, and then they'll offer you the right packaging. There's also, by the way, the best packaging model that I've ever seen. It grows with you as sort of you advance in life. So it's very nicely done. You should study it. All right. Last but not the least, before we wrap up, and I know we've gone through a lot of content, and I'll hopefully this slide deck will be shared, and happy to take questions offline as well, is bringing a product mentality to pricing. What this really means is sort of just a mental framing that helps you broaden the approach. Never 100% done. Grows with the company. Remember, your product portfolio is growing, so why shouldn't pricing? It does involve fierce prioritization. There are so many things you can do with your model, but what about the business goals, and what should we be prioritized, and what should the pricing model be optimized to? It does require deep empathy, connecting with your stakeholders, connecting with your customers, understanding their buyer journey, and then working backwards in creative ways to figure out your model. And then there's many points of execution failure. If your sales team doesn't get it, as we spoke about, it'll break apart, and then you'll be in trouble. And so having this mentality really helps. I'll talk about also what you do from a product mentality perspective that you also apply to pricing is you measure outcomes, just like how you would do for a product. Work on price realization analysis. Think about what prices are being realized at different units of volume, and understand if there's prices are all over the place, and then work backwards to see what changes can you make in your pricing and packaging model. So in this particular example, for example, you have a lot of price points, or a lot of variability rather, when customers or sellers are selling the same amount of list price units. And so if that's the case, this may point you to the direction of, hey, are there different needs and willingness to pay? Is there a one-size-fits-all package that we've put out there? And do we need to create some additions to account for this variability from a pricing perspective? Last but not the least, you do need to connect your pricing to business goals. And so think about measuring success from a model perspective to tying back to these business goals. You could have acquisition-centric goals and creating the right pricing strategies. You think about a free or a freemium or a trial design, and does that align with your customer acquisition targets? What about conversions? You can think about, are we giving away too much or too little in your free model? You can also think about if that's impacting the perception of your paid plans, and if there's a particular segment that you're missing out altogether. Acquisition-centric goals, acquisition-centric pricing design. Similarly, you could also talk about retention, and also you could think about monetization as you help customers grow through the packaging journey. All right. That was a lot of content, and I would readily admit that we went through a lot. So just to recap, start with knowing the lay of the land, how are decisions made in your organization, understanding value, and understanding how that's connected to price. So building a shared understanding of value and estimating it inside the organization for your product and service. Pricing, understanding software pricing, what are the different levers that you have to pull, and how do you bring them together? Communicating your ways to success. Arm the sales team and arm your customers with a better understanding of how your model works and what's the philosophy behind it. And last, have a product mentality, which is iterative and never 100% done, to make improvements from time to time. With that, I'd like to thank you for spending time with me in this whirlwind journey. I'm happy to take questions, obviously, at this point. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a number of folks in the pricing community who are happy to talk about this topic and share some experiences at a personal level. Thank you all. Appreciate your time today.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
This is day 2 of the Product Marketing Alliance's Product Marketing Festival 2021, and we can't thank you enough for your virtual attendance at this year's event, and can't wait until next year when we can all be in a room and network in person once again. I'm Erik Mansur, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, and I'm actually pulling double duty here on day 2. Not only am I your host, I'm also a presenter. We'll be getting to me in just a second, but first some housekeeping. Because the PMA Festival is virtual, you have the unique opportunity to view all of these sessions on demand. Just head over to theproductmarketingalliance.com, register to be a member, and in just a few clicks, you'll have access to a wealth of video content from the 2021 festival and a host of other PMA events. My company, Crayon, is the title sponsor for the 2021 Product Marketing Festival, and I, your humble host, am your next presenter. Coming up right now is Erik Mansur, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, that's me, with a presentation I call Better Together, why a solid partnership between marketing and product can lead to long-term business growth. I'm gonna turn the desk chair around and kick this off.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. We have another awesome live session for you now, and we will be rounding out this session with a live Q&A. So as you're watching the presentation, let us know your comments and questions in the chat section of the video, and I'll be posing them to our fantastic speaker afterwards. And now to hand over to Erik Mansur, the VP of Product Marketing from Crayon. Welcome, Erik.
Hi, thank you for having me, and you've been having me all day, so I'm sure people are sick of me at this point, but I appreciate you having me, Rose. Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be able to speak with each and every one of you about how marketing as a broader department can benefit greatly from connecting more deeply with their counterparts in product development. Now, if you've watched any of the other presentations during day 2 of the PMA Festival, you've probably heard all about me, your host, and my company, Crayon. But if you're one of the sizable portions of attendees who are viewing this presentation on demand, you may not have that context. So at the risk of being repetitive for all of you live viewers, let me bring the binge watchers up to speed with a brief intro. I'm Erik Mansur, and while I've been a product marketer for 7 years, I've been a storyteller my entire life. I left college or university, wanted to be an MTV VJ, and you could tell how that turned out. But I still ended up spending 10 plus years as an on-air radio personality for various top 40 radio stations. I've always had an interest in the messaging side of marketing, and I've spent my time at tech startups doing exactly that, speaking with customers and understanding their unique challenges, working within the structures of my company to make sure that those challenges are being solved by our product team or being openly addressed and understood by our sales, customer success, and marketing teams. My company, Crayon, is the industry leader in market and competitive intelligence software, and we work with some of the biggest enterprise and mid-market companies to bring order to the chaos of intel gathering and distribution. See, each one of those little pieces of confetti on the left side of this slide is a valuable nugget of information about a competitor, so it needs to be brought to heel and delivered to key stakeholders in a scalable way. In that vein, our customers use our tool set to activate competitive intelligence throughout their organization by empowering their sales team and improving win rates through competitor-focused battle cards, helping their customer success team fend off rivals who are trying to steal their customers, ensuring their executive team is well-equipped to make bold, strategic decisions based on what their competitors are up to, and delivering valuable competitive insights to their product team, helping shape their development roadmap. As you can tell, Crayon's approach to deploying competitive intelligence is a bit department agnostic, but not every company in our space sees it that way. There are others that only focus on delivering static battle cards to their client sales teams, which we feel is the wrong way of thinking about CI. It's not all about sales, and competitive intelligence should really go beyond battle cards. So enough about me. Enough about Crayon, but use that idea of going beyond sales as a springboard into the topic of the presentation, better together. Because I believe there's an outdated notion that exists in the world of enterprise business, that sales empowerment is supposed to be the single driving force behind anything a marketing team focuses on. In my mind, it can certainly be one driving force, but it shouldn't be the only one. Now, I can't see any of you, but I know that you're there, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands, even though I can't tell that your hands are raised. So just bear with me and do it alone in your office or in your home. How many of you are product marketers who roll up to a marketing leader as opposed to a product leader? There's probably a sizable portion of you who are like that. And how many of those marketing leaders roll up to a revenue leader, like a CRO or an EVP of sales? Okay, this is the way a lot of companies configure their marketing teams, almost, and I hate to use this word, but almost subservient to a sales organization. But if you're a PMM who reports to a product leader or one who connects to a standalone marketing department with your own executive leader, like a CMO, this presentation is probably still very relevant to you, particularly if you have friends on a sales-aligned marketing team who would love to have a closer working relationship with. And if not, and your reporting structure looks a little bit like this, you yourself are probably one of those product marketers that act as a pivot point, connecting the right people and configuring the right cross-functional processes to drive success. See, for many of the companies that you all work for, your marketing departments either roll up to your chief executive in charge of revenue, i.e. your top sales guy, or you caucus very closely with your counterparts in sales. But why is that? Well, there's a goal that connects the efforts of both your marketing and your sales teams, and that is revenue growth. See, marketing represents the topmost part of a sales funnel, and the vast majority of their efforts result in driving leads into the widest part of that funnel, where they're nurtured down the engagement path and deposited into the willing arms of their account executives, who then use marketing collateral to help them close the deals. They're really two parts of the same whole. It's the new business cycle. So it makes sense that marketing and sales have a hard time getting out of their own way. Let's talk KPIs, key performance indicators, because there's always a number sort of hanging above their heads. Content marketers, demand gen experts, and sometimes product marketers have their performance evaluated to varying degrees based on the bottom line. Things like leads, new contacts, website traffic, and more. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but connecting everyone's job to a revenue goal discounts the fact that there are plenty of other departments, specifically those who may have a more opaque relationship to either the top line or bottom line numbers, who also view net new revenue as a measure of success. They just might do it in a more roundabout way. Case in point, product management. Just like their colleagues in sales and in marketing, the team who's tasked with developing the actual products that those sales and marketing teams are trying to sell more of are also in search of revenue growth. They just go about it in a different way. Engagement with more features, deeper usage of features that are core differentiators, and increased adoption of new functionality all have a dotted line relationship to both negative client churn and broader industry awareness. See, if your product is good and it drives results for your customers, more prospects will be looking to buy it. As a marketer drives leads and the sales team closes them, the product manager drives adoption. The tactics might be different, but the purpose is ultimately the same. So let's not get crazy. I'm not advocating for a complete blowing up of the way high growth companies have been structured for decades, sometimes even centuries. I'm only arguing that the generally accepted view of the structure of marketing teams is entirely too narrow. In my view, the idea that marketing can only contribute to revenue growth through generating leads and creating sales enablement collateral, ultimately putting them in service to sales and sales alone, is a fundamentally flawed view. I believe that another important way that marketing contribute to revenue growth is having closer alignment with the product team. Now, in a moment, I'll talk through some of the ways you can begin to accomplish that. But first, let me talk through my rationale. How did I get to this place? Where did my brain help me arrive at this decision? Well, the work of both marketers and product managers is informed by the needs of the market, their pain points, goals, and the demands of target customers. To put it another way, both departments are seeking out answers to two core questions. Number one, what problems do my prospective customers need to solve? And two, how do we go about solving them? In my career as a product marketer, the closest alignment that I've seen between marketing and product happened when both parties had a very clear understanding of the answers to those questions. And regardless of which side of the building you worked on, their answers were basically the same. And the reasons are simple. If you're a product manager, having those answers make it far easier to build a better mousetrap. And if you're a marketer, you're way better equipped to communicate the value of that mousetrap to whoever your target market is. Everyone does their job more effectively, and all things being equal, you can't account for everything, but all things being equal, there's greater potential for revenue growth over the long term. As I talked about earlier around the quantification of marketing performance, KPIs and the like, you can't necessarily put a value on communicating value, unlike a paid search campaign, Facebook campaign, where you can actually measure the leads that you've generated. But an indirect relationship around human throughput and bottom line revenue doesn't mean that it's an ineffective one. Like I said before, my goal is not to tear asunder the structural connection between marketing and sales teams. That is not my goal. What I am looking to do is have you all consider taking some steps to better connect your marketing efforts with those of your counterparts in product management. And you as product marketers are in the unique position, being able to help both parties recognize the positive impact that can come from closer alignment between your departments. When marketers realize that it's not only about sales support, and they buy into this notion that they could also work in service to the product team and vice versa, good things are going to happen. So if you're bought into the rationale and you're either one of those product marketers who ultimately reports to the CRO and you want to get your marketing teammates a bit more connected with the product org, or you're one of those product aligned PMMs and you see the value of seeing your friends in marketing get more plugged into what's going on the product side, then let's talk through 3 specific ways that you can affect some real change within your organization. So if you were to do a word cloud of my presentation so far, and let's be honest, a word cloud of the rest of the presentation, the biggest bubble would more than likely be variations on the word align. See, when I worked in radio, we would call that a crutch word, something that sort of falls out of your mouth in a way to avoid having dead air. In the context of this discussion, though, I can't think of a better turn of phrase. Because when you think about the word alignment, your mind immediately springs to this notion of putting something on a similar path with something else. So every time that a word comes a tumbling out of the lips of this old radio DJ, I'm actually talking about finding unity across departments with regards to core concerns, duties, and initiatives. And in other words, we're talking about commonalities between product managers and marketers, which end up being opportunities for the two groups to work more closely together. So use cases is the first area of, and if you're playing the alignment drinking game, take a shot, first area of alignment between marketing and product that I'd like to focus on. Depending on the product or service that you're selling, your target audiences will have their own unique reasons for wanting to buy it. Let's take, for example, a plug-in electric car. Some of your buyers are going to be looking to replace their gas-powered automobile solely for the more green and altruistic benefits that zero-emission transportation can offer. Others may view your product as a bit more cutting edge and has the type of techie elements that appeal to their desire to be a bit more future forward. No matter the driving force behind their decision, the outcome could very well be the same. Both buyers could be in market for the same electric car that you're bringing to market. The flip side of that coin, the yin to use cases yang, are pain points. If your buyer is trying to help save the planet through their automobile purchase, then they inherently believe that the earth is in danger from greenhouse gas emissions. Use case, pain point. The same goes for the buyer who wants to drive the iPhone of cars. They believe there's an inherent stodginess to the old school gas-powered sedans that dominate the roadways. Use case, pain point. A few minutes ago, we talked about the two core questions that both marketers and product managers are looking to solve. The question, what problem do my prospective customers need to solve, is a great way to ascertain a pain point. And the follow-up question, how do we go about solving it, should ideally result in a valid use case that one could build around. The thing is, use cases are fundamental to both product and marketing, and they act as a big patch of common ground for both departments to firmly stand upon. Product managers need to identify, understand, and prioritize use cases when creating and executing the roadmap. Marketers need to do the exact same thing when they're positioning and promoting the product. In your roles as product marketers, you can help act as that transition layer, helping your marketing counterparts understand the branding implications of a use case while making sure your product managers recognize that the things that they're building solve for a target audience's specific pain points. Whether your colleagues work in product management or in marketing, the use cases that inform their work are broadly the same. When product and marketing are aligned on use cases, everyone has a better and more consistent job of identifying, understanding, and prioritizing answers to a question that I think combines the two core queries we were talking about before. Why would someone buy our product? As a result, both teams can produce output that's a bit more in line with the needs of the market. I think to my friend Gina Kaiser. She's a former colleague of mine who specialized in brand marketing. And she once told me that she lived by a phrase, quote, "Your brand needs to be consistent from point of click through point of sale, all the way to the point of inflection." Think about it like this. From the moment a customer becomes aware of your brand to when they finally click over to your website is a journey that the marketing team can have full sway over. From that first interaction through the moment where they buy something is where marketing, and really product marketing, can have their say. And in business, a point of inflection is a turning point or a time of significant change in a situation. And what my friend Gina was talking about, or what I think she was talking about, that specific point of inflection, is when a customer begins to fully embrace your product or service and starts to become an advocate for your brand. So the idea about brand consistency from the beginning of the marketing funnel all the way through to the regular use of the product or service is that next area of common ground between a marketing and a product team, and one that should be staked out early and often to unify that brand voice. In the eyes of a prospect turned customer, with each of these interactions comes not only an understanding of your company's value prop, but also taps into the emotions that they have regarding your brand. Cool, Erik, emotions. Really, way to get touchy-feely in the middle of our PMA festival. But honestly, how many times have you invested in an item after you saw a cool Instagram ad? You got the slickness of that marketing made you feel something about the product before you actually made the purchase. And then when you got it, you felt totally different about having experienced the product in real life. Understand number 3 here. The implications around screwing this up could be severe if there's a lot of dissonance between the two presentations, the marketing message and the actual receipt of the product itself, particularly when you're in a competitive market and there's always an alternative for your customer to leave you for. If you and your competitor produce similar messaging that addresses the same set of use cases, but prospects tend to feel more favorable towards your brand, then the differentiation is going to make an impact on the bottom line. In the same way that your relationships with customers don't start when they buy your product, your customers' experience with your brand don't end when they buy your product. In fact, your product's user interface is a form of marketing in a sense that it can reinforce whatever feelings, there's that word again, that you want your customers to experience. Once again, think about it in an abstract way. What if your product doesn't connote similar feelings to the customer as your marketing did when they were a prospect? Wouldn't that result in a missed opportunity to reinforce an emotional association with your brand? Look, I think we've all read our fair share of NPS surveys, and you can always tell when a respondent sort of gets or doesn't get what it is your company's trying to do. And if your competition's right behind you, they're hot on your heels, and they offer a similar set of benefits, who's to stop a customer who isn't fully bought into your brand from making that switch? This is the reason why brand experience is another critical area of alignment between marketing and product. Whether you're a product manager or a marketer, the emotions you want customers to associate with your business need to be the same. And when product and marketing are aligned on brand experience, everyone does a better job of creating a cohesive customer journey from point of click all the way to that all-important point of inflection when you've turned a customer into a brand champion. So I spoke about our next area of potential alignment, take a drink, a bit earlier in my presentation, mostly because it's what I do for a living. No matter what department you work within, upper management, sales, customer success, marketing, or even product development, there's one thing that connects you and the rest of your colleagues. It's the competition. The tasks that you're engaged with on a daily basis ultimately align with your company's core objectives. But those objectives, particularly if they're growth-based and your company exists in a competitive market, will always bump up against the objectives of your closest rivals. Competitive intelligence is the process of gathering, analyzing, and acting on information that's related to your competitive environment. And if CI program is implemented cross-functionally and part of your company's overall culture of competition, it can serve as the backbone of your business, enabling everyone to make the right decisions in the right moments and doing so with confidence. So let's get specific around using CI to find alignment between product and marketing. Competitive intelligence can help product managers create roadmaps that are more differentiated than other companies in your space. And more differentiated roadmaps have a knock-on effect of strengthening the value of your products for customers in a way that your competitors can't. See, in the absence of differentiated roadmaps, there's no actual, tangible reason to use your product rather than somebody else's. So the more your product team knows about the competition, the better equipped they are to build something unique and valuable. On the other hand, competitive intelligence helps marketers create differentiated messaging which allows them to communicate value to your customers in ways that your competitors do not. They may have all the stuff, but if they're not communicating it the same way, that raises the bar for your product. Without differentiated messaging, there's no tangible reason to evaluate your product alongside your competitors. So the more your marketing team knows about the competition, the better equipped they are to persuade prospects that you've built and are continuing to build something uniquely valuable. Whether you're a product manager or a product marketer, the competitive environment that informs your work is ultimately the same. And when product and marketing are aligned on CI, everyone does a better job of differentiating your business in the eyes of the prospect and in the eyes of the customer. So it would be crazy for me to end this presentation without saying that while ensuring this hypothetical alignment between product management and marketing is possible without strong product marketing leadership, it would be hard as hell without people like you at the helm of this initiative. Getting the quote unquote work done on a daily basis is hard enough when you're doing it within your own silos. Any long-term strategic initiative, especially one that's as vague as alignment, take another drink, is sure to take a back seat in the minds of your colleagues in product and marketing. So I can't begin to assume each of your individual job responsibilities, but I would venture a guess to say that it includes one or more of the following. Market research, competitive intelligence, positioning and messaging, go-to-market strategy, pricing, sales enablement, and probably customer marketing. It's a lot of stuff. If you nodded yes to any of those initiatives, then you are already properly positioned to help bridge the gap between product and marketing, because each of those terms sits firmly in the Venn diagram between those two disciplines. To put it another way, if you're in any way bought into this idea that your company could be more successful by having your marketing team more closely aligned to your product development team, then you as a product marketer can be the agent of change that helps brings about that success. And if you're already at the end of your rope and you've got too much stuff going on, get your bosses to double down on product marketing. I'm a product marketer, and I believe that companies that invest in what we do and empower those who do it are usually those that are experiencing healthy, sustainable, and long-term business growth. Once again, I'm Erik Mansur from Crayon, and I'm proud to be a product marketer, and I'm a peer to each and every one of you. I cannot thank you enough for your time today. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them live. Rose?
Amazing. Great session, Erik. And yeah, lots of it's obviously got people thinking by their reaction in the comments. So yeah, a couple of points that I'd love to run past you before you hand back over to your hosting duties. So what stage in a product launch should a PMM get involved?
If you're a product aligned PMM, then you're more than likely already part of the product launch process. You've probably already been helping the product team craft the roadmap. You generally know where things are in the pipeline. So, depending on each PMM's process or work process, you could probably be engaging in go-to-market initiatives right at the outset of the idea. So crafting messaging and running that messaging past existing customers or a panel of prospects. But if you're a sales-aligned product marketing team, if you line up into the CRO, then perhaps it's a little bit more difficult, and you have to start seeding the ground early, getting involved as early as you can, inviting yourself to meetings. But the core goal is ultimately the same. You want to be able to get in the ground floor as the product manager has come up with the use case. Why are they building this product in the first place? That's going to give you help you lay the groundwork for crafting a true message map or a messaging experience for what the feature or the product will eventually be.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Brandon in the comments was saying that, sometimes it takes the product marketer to educate the product team just how much they can help out and what areas they can help out in. So yeah, I think that completely supports exactly what you just said.
Rose, I think there's probably some people who are watching who are probably the only product marketers at their company, perhaps, right? Or
Very likely.
they were the person that invented the discipline at their company. That's entirely possible for some of the biggest disruptors in the space who are considered an enterprise company. Product marketing may be like the second to last thing they brought on. So that notion of education, of bringing all the stakeholders up to speed with the value of what product marketing can do is so important. And actually, not to plug, but it's something that the PMA does a really good job of. There's a lot of content that you guys have to help really establish with key stakeholders the value of product marketing.
Absolutely. It's a pain point that we hear come up time and time again across all of our kind of content pieces and community and everything. So couldn't agree more. But yeah, Erik, I would definitely recommend heading on over, checking out the comments. There's a lot of people who kind of, would love to get in touch with you further, I'm sure. Some really great feedback. So thanks everybody for being so supportive of this session. And we've got a couple more lined up before we take a little break. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Product marketers, are you sick of making case studies, data sheets, product videos, and other content to see it go unused by sales? They say they can't find it and that it's difficult to organize, and good content goes unused because there's so much of it. Your awesome content will convert buyers, but only if sales reps can find and share it. At Enablix, we believe that life is too short for good content to go wasted. Hit us up to see how our simplified sales enablement solution helps product marketers drive revenue with their content.
Good morning, Alaska and Hawaii, and welcome to day 2 of the 2021 Product Marketing Alliance Product Marketing Festival. It's pretty early in the morning where you are, but there's a bunch of your product marketing colleagues who've been with us for the past 3+ hours, and many of them since day 1 of the festival. All of those folks know that I'm Erik Mansur, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, and your host for today's events. But wait, did you miss any of the sessions that happened even earlier this morning? Or any of the great workshops and roundtables that made up yesterday's program? Don't sweat it. Simply go to productmarketingalliance.com, register for membership, and then access the on-demand content library to find links to view the videos of those incredible roundtables and then the presentations from earlier today. By the way, if you're a PMA member, you'll also have access to footage from previous events, exclusive articles, templates, frameworks, and much, much more. My company, Crayon, is proud to be the headline sponsor of the 2021 Product Marketing Festival, and we consider our partnership with the PMA to be an incredibly important one. As more and more product marketers find competitive intelligence gathering and dissemination to be part of their job description, we want to make sure that they know that the undisputed leader in CI software has their backs. Coming up next, an answer to the question, what can make a good marketing campaign a great one? A product marketing manager at Adobe, please welcome McLachlan with his presentation entitled, A Good to Great Framework for Product Marketing.
What is the difference between good and great? Best-selling author Jim Collins famously set out to answer this question in his book, Good to Great. Collins and his team identified companies that leapt from good results to great results and sustained them for at least 15 years, and compared them to companies that were merely good in the process. The difference? The great companies didn't just beat the good ones. They outperformed them by a mile, averaging nearly 7x the general market return over that period. There was nothing remarkable about these companies before they hit the transition point, and Collins spends much of his book trying to group these organizations together to understand why they were able to deliver such exceptional nonlinear returns. And he starts the book by saying good is the enemy of the great. And that is one of the reasons why we have so little that becomes great. I would argue we often take this approach in product marketing. We have launch frameworks and deadlines with generally accepted practices to follow. We have slides to build, sales teams to enable, and product managers to keep happy. And ticking the boxes and delivering what's required, or just good product marketing, can meet everyone's expectations. But marketing is a non-linear practice. The audience we deliver it to doesn't care about frameworks. Many industries are cluttered with a sea of content and sales representatives. Prospective buyers have not just busy jobs, but busy lives to contend with. And as an audience, we're conditioned and used to reading and tuning out the good. Good product marketing doesn't cut through this, but great product marketing does, and engages your audiences, and it tells them what you're all about. And just like great companies can deliver outsized market returns, I would argue that great product marketing can deliver an outsized impact for your organization, and we should strive for this in every launch that we do. And that's why I set out to create a framework to take your and my product marketing from good to great, so that every launch we have crushes the competition and your goals. And the aim of today is to share this working draft with you, some examples that might stick, some quotes from leading product marketers, and hopefully you can take some actionable ideas to apply to your next launch. My name is McLachlan, and I'm a product marketing manager at Adobe, and thanks for taking the time to listen to this talk today. You can check me out on some of the links below, but in a nutshell, I've been in the advertising space for 8 years, and I've been working across Asia Pacific and most recently the US. I'm a massive believer in technology's impact and its ability to make a difference. And for me, everything is a story that we can tell better. If we can find the story and match it with the key insight, we can make it so simple to connect with an audience, make it retellable, and drive revenue for a business. So what does this framework look like? Well, you can leverage these 3 categories at different stages of your product marketing launch process to create extra impact in your campaigns if you follow them. Chaos to concept is about distilling a complex product or industry into its most essential aspects. This is your information gathering phase. And what's critical here is opening your process up to as much information as possible, but then organizing it into a framework that's as simple as it can be. This nicely dovetails into the second pillar, which is frameworks and flair. By building your work into robust and comprehensive frameworks, supported by the correct detail, you create the foundation to enable creativity to flourish and maximize the impact. And finally, launching for longevity. By prioritizing consistency and expanding intentionally, you focus your customers' minds on what's important, building salience, reputation, and trust. So the modern digital-first consumer is more intentional, impatient, and demanding, and more efficient in their decision-making than previous generations. Potential customers simply don't have time or the bandwidth to fight through endless jargon or unclear value in order to see the benefit of your product. And that's why it's so critical to define a simple yet engaging product narrative to create the foundations for prospects to buy into your vision, making it easier for your sales teams to get to the key aspect of the message, even when you're not in the room. And that's what Chaos to Concept is about. It's all about cutting through the jargon and distilling the complexities of an industry into a clear, understandable arc that creates the right context for your product to showcase its most valuable assets. Product marketers need to reject the status quo and design a narrative that can't be ignored, says Marcus Andrews. The views of your sales team and product teams are important, but it's equally important to pay attention to what your competitors are saying, what your customers are saying, what your partners are saying, and bring all of this together to create a story that is truly unique and clear. Find the point of leverage that no one else can compete with and ensure that it's pervasive throughout your story. Once you have this, remember to remove as much jargon as possible and get into clear and simple terms as possible the message that you're trying to convey. You want your story to be easy to retell. And just because you live in a world of acronyms and technical language doesn't mean your customer or sales teams do. One of my favorite examples of making a story easy to retell is the story of how eBay went from perfect markets to Pez. In November 97, when buying things on the internet was still reserved primarily for a small segment of the population, the eBay leadership embarked on a vision tour. The idea was to get their CEO and founder in front of industry analysts and reporters to spread the word about the growth and potential of eBay and their passionate user base. CEO Pierre Omidyar was prepared for questions around the challenges of buying products on the internet and even some skepticism. But what he encountered was much worse. No one at all was interested in the story. In the words of their early head of PR, Mary Song, no one wanted to hear a story about a 30-year-old genius who wanted to create the perfect market. That just wasn't what eBay was about. And that's when it hit her. She needed to tell a more accessible story. And she had just the one. CEO Omidyar's fiance had just moved to Silicon Valley, and she was having a hard time finding people who shared her interest in collecting and trading Pez dispensers. And when Song started calling up reporters, she said that while Perfect Markets was their official founding story, the real inspiration was Pierre Omidyar creating a place for his fiance to sell her Pez dispensers. And from here, the legend was born. And the eBay story really started to catch fire as they had something that was easy to retell and matched what they were all about. Many people could talk about Pez in a way that they couldn't talk about a perfect market. So by making the same point in a more accessible way, Song had found a way to retell the story that would stick in people's minds and have an outsized impact. In short, the story went from good to great. From Pez to milkshakes. Another key aspect of chaos to concept is to find the hidden motivators that truly drive demand for your products. Rather than just sitting in a room with your team and hypothesizing what people think is important, or just listening to what your sellers are saying, it's also important to get out into the field yourself and truly and impartially test this out. A famous example that I love is Clayton Christensen's milkshake case study. He was engaged to conduct in-depth observations of a fast food restaurant chain's customers and understand why they were actually buying these milkshakes to grow and drive revenue. Now, while the surveys of the customers outside of this time told them that consumers cared about price, flavor, health, the restaurant was finding that this didn't actually change any decision-making. So Christensen started observing and interviewing customers right when they purchased the product. And he found what customers really wanted was something to keep them entertained while they went about their morning commute. By focusing on a different aspect of what the real motivator for their customers was, the restaurant was able to create the ultimate commuter beverage and saw a significant rise in revenue. This wasn't 100% intuitive, but the product was able to go from good to great. Now, product marketers can apply some key practices in order to better perform this narrative chaos to concept phase of their role. Number one is to embrace a curious mindset. To uncover the hidden links beneath the surface that will help your narrative resonate with your intended audience, you can probe your engineering leads, product managers, customers, and sales teams to find that spark that holds the key in realizing value and place that at the center of your story. Try to find the unintuitive human motivations that drive the decision to buy or not buy your product. And if something is interesting to you, make sure you dig into that. Secondly is to be customer zero for your story. As you go on a journey to understand a new feature, industry, or service, make sure that you take note of what happened while you went through this journey. Were you bored as you read through industry primers? Was it hard to wrap your head around something? Was it easy for you to tell that story straight away? Take note and don't make the same mistake when you go about your launch. And finally, and something I am very interested in myself, is sharing widely and bracing for impact. Sharing your work with a wide range of trusted stakeholders will give you ample opportunity to sharpen your work and develop faster feedback loops on the strength of your story. It might bruise your ego a little bit in the process, but being open to constructive feedback is a core tenet of powerful story development, because it means you're building on not just your own experience, but the experiences of others that you might be too close yourself to see. Next, we move on to frameworks and flair. This is an exciting one because the old adage of "I fell into product marketing" often reflects that many of us who've come to this role did so because we might be creative, we might make great content, we might tell a great story, and none of us really went to school for product marketing. Very few of us actually start our careers as product marketers, and newcomers generally enter either with a product, engineering, or sales background, combined with some kind of predisposition towards storytelling that helped them succeed in their previous role. And if you're anything like me, you initially heard about a lot of these frameworks that help shape a story and things like positioning statements and launch grids, and you might have thought that it actually crimped the creativity that got you into this place. It can often feel like these frameworks constrict creativity. But when applied correctly, it's clear that balancing frameworks and flair together is not zero sum at all, but additive in turning your work from good to great. Frameworks can add the rigor and the foundation to properly direct your creativity or flair to drive the critical business outcomes that a narrative or launch set out to deliver. Creativity excels within constraints. The framework approach takes away some of the mental gymnastics needed to make up a good narrative or launch work and frees up your brain for innovation, says my old boss, Mary Sheehan. By approaching frameworks and flair in a methodical approach, we can make our work impactful and rigorous, creative and robust. It takes these two things from seemingly countervailing forces into complementary ones. And why is this important? Because if we do one or the other, we don't give ourselves an opportunity for greatness. You can deliver the most incredible creative activation, but if the frameworks and plans don't exist to provide it with longevity or power, it might be forgotten in a week, or even worse, not push the customer to actually digest the message you pushed across. And if we just follow frameworks, we're opened up to commoditization. Anything in the market that is successful is quickly copied by many people. And an example of this is a Bloomberg 2020 article about the growth of brands who follow an identikit formula of business model, look and feel, and tone of voice. And while this might prove successful at hitting short-term business metrics, make it easier to scale and lower the costs and risk of creating a brand, these brands will be put to the test and when they look to drive longevity. And when the ecosystem shifts and they're looking to expand, they may find that it's a lot harder and they're reliant on those things that got them there in the first place. So how can you build frameworks and flair? Well, number one, make sure you leverage what exists, right? There's no need to reinvent the wheel. All of the frameworks you could possibly ever need really to power your launch efforts already exist, created by PMMs and marketers that came before you. There's timeless tools that go back decades. A few recent ones I really like is obviously April Dunford's positioning framework and Product Marketing Alliance and Marcus's narrative design course. And these have been tested and honed by years to help people articulate, road test, and gain internal buy-in for launches to ensure that it has the rigor to cover bases and drive business outcomes. This will save you time and your sanity and give you the space to innovate on top of strong foundations. The second is to ask yourself, are you not entertained? Once you've packaged your launch up, it's time to let your creative brain get to work. Ticking all the boxes on a launch list and pushing it out the door might mean your launch looks polished, but it might miss the spark to connect with people. At some point in this phase, it's critical to remember that your audience is human. They might not read your copy or watch your webinar if it's simple and boring. Be honest with yourself and assess if the launch is looking a little flat, and find ideas that will help this really grow. Finally, it's hard for many brands or consumers to conceptualize, adopting, or purchasing something that they fully don't understand, which is why repetition and exposure are so critical to building awareness, trust, credibility, and mindshare. And it's often tempting to rip up the playbook to tell a story of a new feature or take on a competitor. Your prospects need to understand what you stand for, and it's hard to do this if your narrative changes all the time. And so as we touched on in the previous example, we need to focus on launching for longevity. Good product marketing might have a strong launch day, but great product marketing stands the test of time. And I love this quote from Kevin Garcia, the head of product marketing at Retool. He says, great product narratives are all about consistency. By telling one story in multiple acts, you give customers the chance to get very familiar with your narrative. Over time, that familiarity turns into confidence. And once your customers deeply care about who you are and what you do, every product launch works better. Once you've done the foundations in the first two parts, you can expand on this work in the rest. Launching for longevity is about viewing each release as a piece in the jigsaw of your customer's mind. Unless you're launching a new product or story, every incremental release should be seen as an opportunity to add clarity to the work that your company does on behalf of your customers. Companies such as Disney, Apple, and Ford have done this over decades, and some great recent examples in the digital space are the likes of Stripe and Shopify. Stripe has a simple and clear mission to be the payment infrastructure for the internet. And every product release, I find, fits really easily into their mission and narrative, making product launches easier to understand and additive to what they've already been building. So how can you do this? Well, number one, consistency is key. If you've got your positioning right, it should be clear what you want to say. There's nothing revelatory in this, and it's been part of marketing forever, but it's sometimes forgotten in product marketing. Ensure that the core message is clear and omnipresent over time across channels, including marketing, sales, case studies, and more. Once you've got this, making sure that when you have a launch coming out or you're doing a new channel, make sure that there's subtle tweaks rather than major overhauls. And this is really because You shouldn't need to release a new story or narrative every time. You don't need to reinvent everything. Building on top of the existing story by finding new and innovative ways to say or leverage different channels to say the same thing can be a core element of enabling longevity. Customer stories are a great vessel for this, which can help the middle of the market view what you've been talking about through a lens that makes it easier for them to relate and clearly see the benefits and the ability to do this themselves. And finally, building a mental FAQ for your next release. The launch date for your product, feature, or narrative should be seen as day one of your next refresh. Rather than dusting your hands off and moving on, keeping an honest, keen eye on how everything lands and the type of questions you'll get can help you understand what you need to do for your next release. So finally, what I shared with you today isn't revelatory, and these principles are built on the work of decades of amazing product marketers and over a century of incredible marketing. If you don't believe me, go and read a book from the 1960s or 1970s about marketing. A lot of it is the same, even if the channels and speed and frequency and everything we deal with today has changed. And ultimately, if you take one thing away from this article, it would be every time you have a piece of work, how can I make this great? And often that's all the spark that a project needs. So if you like this today, I'm a massive reader. I have a ton of different recommendations that I could share. But I have a couple of different books that I would like to say can help you dig into 3 different aspects of this presentation. One is that in Chaos to Concept, there's a couple of books called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke is just a great way to understand decision-making and how people perceive things, which I think is really important as you look to understand an industry or challenge and get into the minds of your customer. While the storytelling animal really helps you wrap your head around, how to tell a story, how people connect, and the shape of these things that people need. As we get to Framework and Flair, April Dunford's obviously awesome has come out a few years ago, and I think it's recommended reading for everyone that checks it out. It's just such a great book that talks about product positioning to get your customers to, as they say, get it, buy it, love it. And on the Flair side, I think Alchemy by Rory Sutherland is just a great way to think about adding that spark and bit of magic to every campaign that you do, which I love to take away for myself. And in the launching for longevity side, Hitmakers is a great way about how ideas and things have been innovated over time and how something can be built up and built up and built up. And eventually that idea hits that spark point, which helps it go viral and really just gives a lot of great analogies and different ways to think about ideas and continuing to innovate on a story that is just about to work. And the other one is Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Stephen Pressfield, which is just a great book about, keeping yourself honest when you're putting things out the door, making sure everything relates, making sure everyone can understand it, making sure you're cutting out a lot of jargon. So these are 6 books. I'm sure I could recommend 10 more, but really great places to get started on all of this stuff, as well as everything, already that we have in the product marketing communities. If you have any questions and follow-ups, I'd love to hear from you. This is my Twitter. This is my LinkedIn. Please reach out. My name is Nick McLachlan. And thank you so much for engaging with this presentation today.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. So just before we let you have a quick break, we have an awesome session for you from Sridhar Ramanathan from Aventi Group, and he's going to be talking all about how to write a killer value proposition. Again, this is one of our live sessions today, so feel free to ask all your questions and pop your comments in the chat box on LinkedIn, and I'll be putting these to Sridhar at the end of the session. So the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Rose. Wonderful to be here. Hello, everyone. Really appreciate the Product Marketing Alliance putting this on. We have lots of wonderful experts, leaders out there in the market. Today, I'm going to focus on how to write a killer value proposition. And I know all of you have written value props before. I personally have done probably hundreds over the last 25 years. So what I'm really going to share here today are some actual best practices from clients of ours that we have done and work with. And this is meant to be a very practical session, so I'm hoping this gives you some specifics you can take away. We have a template at the end to share. Let me start with what is a value proposition. I know you know this. One of my fellow Aventi partners, who is an amazing leader, formerly vice president at SAP, came up with this sentence, which is a value prop really speaks to the job that your product, your solution is intended to do. It's the promise. Ultimately, it is the promise or the benefit of your offering. Now, of course, this sounds pretty straightforward. I will tell you, and I'm sure many of you see this, a lot of times people write value props and it's really more of a feature statement or a technology statement. It's not really about value. So we're going to concentrate on value, specifically what is the value in the mind of the customer. Now, why is a value prop so important? I know you all know this, but one of the biggest benefits is getting people in your company and your business unit all on the same page. I'm sure you've all seen this. Sales folks have one idea of what the value prop is. Different people within marketing, definitely the engineering team, product management team, the executive team. You know, many times the value prop is not consistent. It's not well defined. People are not on the same page. And when that's the situation, then obviously a lot of your execution is flawed. There's a lot of money that's being spent that's not making an impact. So ideally, the value prop is something that you formally get approval on and becomes the foundation. It also sets the stage for your identity. What is it? What business? What category are you in? What market are you playing in? So as we talked about, it's foundational to all your sales and marketing execution. The value prop should be, again, approved and used in all your execution. It also provides quite a litmus test or a focus because things will come up. The engineering team will come up with new product ideas, new features. You might have new technology alliances, new geographies, new partners. All of those have to sort of reinforce your value proposition. So this provides quite a bit of focusing. A value prop provides quite a bit of focusing. Now, there are many pieces of marketing. You all know this, but I want to be clear on where does a value proposition fit in your communications. So first off, it is the promise. It's the promise of the value that you're about to deliver. That is different from positioning. Positioning, as you know, is more about the position you want to occupy in the mind of the customer. A shortcut to that is the category. What category are you in? Are you a cybersecurity firm? Are you a HR SaaS company? Are you an infrastructure play? Are you a storage company? You know, sometimes positioning is similar to a category in the mind of the customer. So that's not a value prop, that's positioning. Next is messaging. Messaging nowadays, of course, marketers are very sophisticated. We message to specific audiences, specific personas. So messaging is meant to be crafted as a communication to those specific target personas. Again, that's not a value prop, that's messaging. And then lastly, a tagline. Sometimes people get confused on a value prop. Is that the same thing as a tagline? It is not. Tagline tends to be a short, catchy phrase, a statement, a kind of a selling point. A value prop really is this promise of the value to be delivered. Now, in this talk, I'm going to share with you some specific templates. Now, I also want to clarify, value prop is not intended to be used as is by the salespeople or put up on your website immediately. It very much is a foundational statement that different folks are using. So copywriters will take the value proposition and turn that into copy for your website. Your branding team, when they're doing advertising and digital and media buys or ad copy, they're going to start with the value prop, among other things. They're going to need personas, they're going to need your branding strategy, et cetera. But the value prop is used by those professionals. Digital marketing, your campaigns team is going to need to, what is the value prop? To whom? Why should they care? All that is covered within the value prop. The designers are going to want to visualize, create a visual representation of your value prop, or actually create creative different design, logos, images, graphics. All those elements should reinforce your value proposition. They should be consistent. So they are going to be consumers of your value prop. Marcom, your Marcom team, of course, they're going to need it for all kinds of execution, websites, social, search, etc. And then sales enablement, even the sales enablement team needs to use the value prop for sales training materials, for battle cards, for playbooks. So you'll notice here, one audience that's not here on the value prop is you don't want to hand it directly to sales. You don't want to give it straight to your web team to go put up on the website. It really is meant to be a foundational piece. So I want to make that clear up front. Now, there are three things that are key. If you're going to create a killer value prop, now everyone on this call has created value props, but if you want a killer value prop, here are the three whys to think about. It's almost like a litmus test. Number one, why? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? If you remember Michaela Goebbels-Bota in our team at Aventi, she posited that it's got to solve a specific job that a person is trying to achieve on the customer side. What problem are we trying to solve? Is it really worth solving that problem? Is it a nice to have? Is it a critical pain point? How high of a priority is it? We also want the value prop to speak to why now. It's the case for change or the case for action. And this includes status quo. A lot of times customers are fine. It's not enough of a pain to make a move. So we want the value prop to be compelling, to be actionable, to be urgent. So it needs to convey some level of urgency and maybe a little bit about the consequence of inaction. What if you don't, move forward, customer? Then what's at stake here? Third thing is why us? We need to get the differentiator in the value prop because it's not enough to say why and why now. You also want to distinguish why your company, your solution. And there's some claims. You're going to need to make some claims that should be defensible, should be backed up by proof points, should be concrete, measurable. And then that helps to reinforce the why we are the best option. So let's get into some real examples. I'm going to give you two flavors, a short version and a long version. And I'm going to give you three specific client examples. And these might be kind of templates for you all to think about. First example I'm going to use is a SaaS company. They're in the facility management software space. They're, full disclosure, they're a client of ours called 4Insight. They sell software to large organizations that have a lot of facility workers. So think of custodial staff, think of electricians, plumbers, landscapers, all those contract people or folks who come into buildings or facilities to maintain the facility. So this is the short version of the value prop. 4Insight helps organizations connect, analyze, manage, empower their frontline staff. Now, that's a very concrete, it may not sound exciting to you all, but I will tell you the persona that we're speaking to is dealing with these issues here. Let's go through this one by one. Manual processes. The current pain is facility executives, VPs, directors are fed up with a lot of manual processes, very disconnected tools, managing all these workers. And it could be literally hundreds of workers on site. With the pandemic going on, there's extra concerns about safety and compliance. And unions are concerned about the health and well-being of the workers. So the why is very compelling. You can't have that kind of situation. So you need ideally a SaaS solution that is built specifically for facility management. And why now? Because you're losing customers. There are customers that are unhappy with the quality issues. The bathrooms aren't totally clean, or the facilities are not being maintained, they're not safe, and the facility companies are choosing other competitors. So this gives you a little feeling about what the value prop looks like. Now, to get to this, we go to the long form version. So I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, so I'll just spend a moment to go through this. This is a tool that product marketing folks have used for decades. It's been around a long time. There's a Stanford professor, I think his name is Lynn Phillips, who originally coined the long form value prop. I was a former HP executive. We were trained on this long form tool. This is just a tool for product marketing folks. You don't necessarily need to share this out with everybody. In this example I'm sharing with you 4Insight, we start off with who are the target companies you're going after, large organizations that have a large frontline staff, at least 50 of those. So this is similar to the ideal customer profile. Who are they? These are companies that have some pain on quality, safety, compliance, union issues. And here's this is the positioning, the category for Insight is a facility management solution, it's a SaaS offering. That's the mental bucket. We want customers to think, oh, you're a SaaS offering or a software company. You're not a services company, you're a software company. So that's the positioning. Now this is what we're delivering. This is what 4Insight does. It's reporting, dashboard, mobile communications, all the stuff here. Now the differentiator here is versus manual tools, which are a pain in the neck. They lead to all kinds of quality problems, compliance problems, safety problems. And there's an option which sometimes customers have internally developed software. So that's a competitor. That's the do nothing scenario. That's the status quo scenario. So the reason to go with 4Insight is it optimizes that facility workflow so that you can get higher quality. You can have higher quality, higher safety, higher compliance. These are the things that they care about, the outcomes. Notice we don't talk about feature function. We're talking about outcomes. We're driving higher quality. So that's one example of a long form. Again, it's a bit pedantic. It takes a lot of work to go through this. I want to give you another example. This is a security software company. I'm going to do the same thing. So here's the short version of the value prop statement. So a little context. Absolute is a security software company. If you have a Windows laptop, maybe it's a Dell, maybe it's an HP or a Lenovo, very likely you have this software running on your laptop. It's at the BIOS level. It's down almost at the metal. Now, this software is super important because it manages and secures data, devices, applications that are unbreakable. The key word here is unbreakable. On an endpoint means the device. That could be your laptop as an example. Sometimes your laptop is off the internet. You're not online. And even in that scenario, this laptop is unbreakable. So let's go through our 3 whys. The first why is customers are looking to protect their data. They don't want to be hacked. They don't want privacy or information to get out. They don't want their devices to get hacked. Ransomware is a big deal now. You've all heard about the SolarWinds hack and many hacks going on that are damaging. So companies, organizations are afraid of being hacked. So that's a big why. Now, why us? Why absolute? Well, the key word here is unbreakable. It really is unhackable because it's down at that almost metal level. It's at the BIOS level, which hackers can't get access to. Now, why us? Why now? I mean, why now? Well, can you afford to be hacked and wind up on the front page? You don't want to be the next story in the Wall Street Journal or online media. So this is a real fear that a lot of chief information security officers have. They don't want the board coming to them saying, why didn't you do something about this? So this is a super compelling solution, and this is a compact value prop statement. How do we get to this? Here's the long form version. Let me walk you through that. So at Absolute, they're targeting the IT organization, the IT asset management director, also security operations professionals. Those are the ones who's next on the line. They're the ones who will get fired if there's a breach, or they're the ones who will get promoted if their environment is really secure and very locked down. Now, what kind of organizations? This is not meant, Absolute was not targeting small businesses and end customers. They're really targeting the largest of organizations with thousands of users, thousands of mobile users. Now, who specifically? It's the IT organizations that are struggling with compliance. How do you protect all those endpoints? An endpoint, again, is a laptop. Typically, it's a laptop, iPod, your phone, any device where you're doing work. How do you guarantee 100% of those devices are secure, they're compliant? Well, Absolute, and this is the category. Remember, they're a firmware embedded application. They're software, but they're firmware embedded, unlike enterprise software security, for example, or unlike a SaaS cloud pure play solution. This is embedded application. That's the category, that's the positioning. And what Absolute involves is it finds those endpoints that are non-compliant, puts them back into compliance and repairs them. That's the job that the customer is trying to do. The IT person is trying to make sure all these devices are getting back in compliance, because a lot of times they fall out of compliance. They don't have the latest patches, they don't have the latest antivirus, they don't have the latest OS updates. So that's the job the IT person is trying to do. And unlike traditional security patches, with a lot of times they fall out of working. When you go offline, those security patches are not enforcement. They're not working. They're not effective, or they're not costly, or they are costly. So what is key here is it's persistent, meaning even if you're online, offline, you reboot your machine, no matter what, that Absolute embedded application is running. It's unbreakable. That's a really powerful value proposition statement, this idea of unbreakability. That's the core of the message here. The core of the value proposition is it's unbreakable, that connection. Oops, sorry. And that ensures a resilient environment. So as the customers are changing their desktops, things are happening, no matter what, that device is locked down. So that's the long form value prop we use. And again, this is used only by the product marketing team, this long form, in order to help the copywriters, the designers, the sales enablement team, also come up with the copy blocks that are necessary. So let's go through example number 3. Here's the third one. This is a large corporation, Unisys, and this is one of their services offerings. It's called Workplace Solutions. It's not software, it's services. It's actually a set of capabilities. The idea here is to engage, empower, and transform the digital workforce. Now, everyone nowadays is digital. We're all pretty digital warriors. Now, some companies are more digital or more reliant on productivity. So the why here, let's talk about the why. Lots of companies are investing heavily in remote access, in digital everything, digital workflows. And it's key for competition, to stay ahead of your competition. So you need a company that is experienced, that's objective, that's not trying to. We are a services partner to help deploy this full digital workplace. And I'll go through that in just a second. Why now? Well, your competition is already moving to digital. They're already transforming their enterprise. So let us help you catch up and overcome and exceed your competition. So here again, we're going to look at the long form. This is what the product marketing team and we here at Aventi crafted. We start off with the target customer, the ideal customer profile. We are looking for large organizations that are super dependent on so-called knowledge workers. These are people who are primarily delivering information and analysis, and you're hiring them for very much their brains. Where is that important? In banks, insurance companies, manufacturing companies, high tech, life sciences, pharmaceuticals, all those companies are relying on scientists, engineering, financial analysts. So super important to make them productive. So those companies, we are targeting only the ones that are committed to digital transformation. They may even have a chief digital transformation officer. So we can look for clues that this target ICP, ideal customer profile, is going after digital transformation. So what is Unisys Digital Workplace? It's a services offering, starting off from advisory to implementation to managed services. This has a special meaning for customers who really need help. They're understaffed, they don't have the right expertise, they're short on IT, and they just really need help. So this is where services comes in. They have a proven capability, Unisys does, the whole digital lifecycle. Unlike traditional IT outsourcers that may be offshore, I won't name names, but you can guess a lot of the traditional IT outsourcing companies. What Unisys specializes in is industry experience. They have deep experience with financial services, banking, manufacturing. They're also neutral, meaning they're not trying to push one software solution or a set of software. They're really doing what's right for the customer. They're persona-based, so they're different buyers within these enterprises. And they offer some pretty deep security. So these are some of the differentiators. All of these, by the way, have proof points behind them. And then lastly, well, who cares? So this is all great. Well, what impact is it going to have? This goes to the heart of the value prop. The value prop is about business value. We're going to drive higher productivity, and that's going to also improve their capital expenditure and operating expenses. So you do want to catch the so. The so is the business benefit. It's the why. Why does this matter? So those are 3 long-form examples of customer value propositions. And I want to talk for a moment about it. There's a lot of work that goes into value props. And I know everyone here on today's call you've all created value propositions before. The thing to think about is how to make it really rigorous. So one thing we recommend is getting customer research to understand the pain points. Don't let just the product engineering, product management side talk just feature function. Product marketing is here to do a lot of research, customer research, to get to the pain points and why those matter. Why those pains need to be addressed. What's the business value? Also, interview sales and SEs. I love SEs, system engineers. They usually really know what's going on with regards to pain points. So the product marketing folks, we recommend when you're working on value props, definitely do original research. Talk to folks like salespeople and SEs and ask them what works, what's not working. Sometimes the feature function you think is important isn't so important. Competition, obviously, they're hammering on their own value proposition. So you got to nail your differentiators. So a bit of competitive analysis is very important to craft a value prop. Industry analysts, influencers, the Gartners, IDCs, Forresters, you have your own analysts who are watching your space. A lot of times it's good to test with them, confidentially test with them the value prop. And I think testing is super important. Before you finalize and recommend the value prop for approval, you want to give credibility to your internal teams by telling them, look, we've vetted this, we've tested this, not just with sales and SEs, with customers, with analysts. We've even looked at competition, and we think this thing is really very strong. Now, one way to test your value proposition is we have a little 8-point test here, and I'll be wrapping up my talk here in just a second. Here's 8 questions to ask yourself. After you've created the long form version of the value prop or the short form, does it speak to a specific customer segment? Don't be generic like, oh, all large enterprises. We need to be specific. What industry, what size organization, what are there some of the pain points? So we don't want to be generic, we want to be specific. Is it customer specific? Is it all about you, the vendor, or is it all about the customer and their pain point? Does it resonate? So this is where testing is important. We need to know that this value prop actually is resonating. And how do you know? Because customers have told you. You've vetted this with at least 10 qualitative interviews and maybe hundreds of quantitative surveys. Differentiation, make sure you clearly state, including status quo, that's do nothing, including the do nothing scenario, where the customer is, yeah, it's a pain, yeah, but it's not enough to go do a purchase and a deployment. We don't want to go through the headache. So differentiation is important against you. Sometimes your number one competitor is do nothing. It's people just saying, I'm good enough. Is it believable? Is it credible? Is it emotional? By the way, a lot of times I see value props which are really engineering, very heady, very intellectual. That's great, but what drives the buying process, the buying journey, the buyer's journey is often the emotional driver. Sometimes in the security world, I deal with a lot of security software companies, cybersecurity. Fear is a big driver. You don't want to be talking about fear, but you want to understand that the chief information security officers, the IT folks, they're afraid of getting hacked. And that emotion is important to understand and acknowledge in your process. Sometimes the emotion may be excitement, it may be power or confidence. So tap into the emotion in your value prop. Language, sometimes we tend to speak jargon. I deal with a lot of B2B technology companies and they use a ton of acronyms. Try to stay away from that. Use words that customers use. So be careful about that. And then lastly, is it compelling? Is it credible? Is it clear? Your message testing will really confirm that. So we've gone through quite a bit of stuff. I want to turn it over to all of you on today's call. We have a little template on our website, the long form template and then the short form template. You can just click here and download that. This will be your little template for creating awesome, killer value propositions. So thanks, everyone. Why don't we open it up now for questions? I know you have a break in a few minutes, so Rose, bring it on up, and let's go through them.
Absolutely, and that was a great session. And yeah, for anyone that missed it, I just shared the value proposition template link in the comment section of the video, so definitely go and check that out. It was really useful. We have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one I picked up was just quickly, what are the key differences between a value proposition and a mission statement?
Yeah, let's go back to that first slide. Mission statement is more around the why you exist. So if I were to add, that's a good one. I probably should have a fifth box here, which is mission. So mission, purpose. If you look at Tesla as a fun company, they're all about sustainability, energy sustainability. Their mission statement is, literally go look at Tesla, it'll say their mission is about energy, helping the world move to sustainability. They don't say electric vehicles, they don't say solar panels, they don't say, SpaceX. Their value proposition is a value of a specific offering. So like a Tesla car has a specific value proposition. Tesla, the company, the mission of the company is to help the world move to a sustainability scenario. So mission is about purpose. It's about why you exist. Value prop gets to the point solution you have to offer. Does that help there, Rose?
Yeah, absolutely. Very clear.
That tip. I'm going to add a fifth box here so people can see that. Yeah.
Totally. So this one's a bit lengthy. So to get to the why us, do you create customer problem statements to understand customers' biggest problems that you're solving? Or is there another way that you'd find out what differentiates you?
I think there are two pieces embedded in there. There's the customer's pain point, which is over here, the problem they're trying to solve. And then there's different competitive differentiation. So let's talk about the first one. It is super important. This is the job of the product marketing manager. This is why product marketing is here. This is why we exist. We're the voice of the customer. We have to be clear about the pain point, the problem. I have a whole blog post on that I can post later on here, Rose. But
absolutely.
That's research. It's research. It's fundamental customer research. It's interviewing customers. When you're doing a customer testimonial, for example, really dig on what is the problem, the job the customer was trying to accomplish. Why was that difficult? What if you had a better solution? So to me, there's some rigorous work product marketing can do around the pain point. Differentiation is a lot of homework. It's a lot of competitive analysis, including do nothing. Remember, competition, your number one competitor could be absolutely do nothing. The key to do nothing is understanding how bad of a pain is it and how much of a priority is it to fix it. So I guess the short answer to your question is do your work on competition, know who they are, how do you differentiate? Your points have to be provable, defensible, measurable, concrete, specific. The differentiation has to be not generic, like, oh, we're better, we're faster, we're, how much faster, how much better is important there. So I want to keep my answer kind of crisp, but let's separate the two buckets, customer pain point definition and research versus competitive analysis. That has to be actionable.
Yeah, makes sense. And a lot of positive comments saying, yes, would love to see that blog post. So either share in the comments here, or obviously if you want to show your kind of how to get in touch with you slide again as well, then people can reach out to you directly as too, I'm sure. Okay, so we have a couple more questions just quickly that we can squeeze in. So do you have an example of how the value proposition, both short and long, translates into like the positioning and then the messaging? Someone is saying that they need to show the connection to their team who is learning how to move on from one to the next, but not just use the value proposition directly in the copy.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably should have shown the connective tissue, but the three examples I gave, and I know we'll be sharing the slide deck out, all of these you will see, let's say this long form at Unisys. If you go to the website and look up workplace solutions, the connective tissue is really the product marketing manager. It's much of their job to handle. Remember these three audiences? Let me go back to the audiences. Who are the people who are going to use, sorry. I apologize here. I'm just trying to get that slide again.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, here are the people. So let's put in your example, you have a long form statement and you're working with the copywriter. Let's suppose the copywriter is creating a web page. You want to sit with the copywriter to explain the long form value proposition, work with them, have them come up with a draft, and you review it and edit it before they put up that web page. So, or maybe it's a data sheet, or maybe it's a white paper. It really is a collaboration between the product marketing manager and whoever you're working with to express and bring that value prop to life in the different environments. So for example, let's suppose you're working with your social media team and they're doing a LinkedIn campaign, an ABM campaign, campaign marketing campaign, and you've got your value prop, and the digital marketer, social media person's trying to target a specific persona, let's say the CIO. You want to give them some creative latitude, like, what do you think? Can you come up with a draft? And let's work together on making sure that your draft social media execution is consistent with the value prop. What you don't want to do is throw it over the wall. You don't want to take this value prop and say, hey, graphics person or copywriter or brander or digital, now go to it. It's not a throw over the fence. It's a collaboration. Work with them, let them come up with the draft, you review it, refine it, and then they can run. So you have to invest some of your time to coach them, work with these internal colleagues before you throw it over the fence. And then ultimately, they need to own all these. You're empowering a lot of people to own the execution of the value prop. So you want to invest in these colleagues of yours to make sure they've got it. That's a way to scale your time. Hope that answered your question there, Rose, or the participant. Thank you for asking.
Definitely. And on the flip side as well, just while we've got you talking about this subject area, there's someone actually that brought up from the perspective of the sales team using the value proposition. So they're saying that they struggle to get the sales team to understand that the value prop isn't necessarily something that they should be using, isn't something that they use, sorry. But yeah, they want to have something like a value statement to be using in their conversations with prospects and customers. What else can they do to help them understand how to use a value prop? So yeah, that's from a sales perspective.
From the sales perspective, the biggest favor you could do, remember, don't just send the long form value prop to the salespeople. That's not fair because you're making them do a lot of work. What is better, more effective is this is what salespeople really want to know. What is the problem that my customer prospect is trying to solve? Why should they move now? And why does this matter? Right? And then why us, which is the differentiation. So think about, I'm a salesperson, I'm a seller, I'm a sales rep, for example, an account executive, for example, or maybe I'm a sales development rep, SDR. What I need is maybe it's a talk track, it's a little cheat sheet, it's a little one pager, or maybe it's a sales playbook. that document better tell me the why my prospect should care, why now, and why us. If you can answer those three questions for the salesperson, you're there. That is the bulk of this. Now, how you do that is the value proposition statement, but don't take the statement by itself. Remember, it needs to be turned into a sales asset, and the asset might be a sales playbook. It might be a battle card, competitive battle card, where you have, here's the pain point we're solving for differently than any of our competitors. It might be in a sales script, a little talking point sheet that an SDR uses. So we have to work backwards. What tool is the sales rep using? A lot of times they're in Chatter, Salesforce Chatter, or they might be in Slack talking to fellow reps. In that Chatter, you want to give them some tools, a little intranet page, like a wiki page that says why now, why us? If you can answer those three things, you've gone a long ways. Just don't send the value prop to them directly. That's why sales enablement team is so important. The sales enablement team should be translating the value prop into these three expressions. Hope that answers that question.
Definitely. So they're the missing link. That definitely makes sense.
They're the missing link. Yeah,
and we are just about out of time, but I'm going to squeeze in one last question because there's so much interaction in the chat. Krista is asking, do you find a certain tone resonates better when crafting your value prop?
Yeah, the tone, no matter what, take the high road. So the tone, this depends on the persona you're talking to. Remember, who you're speaking to, you want to speak in their language, their emotions. Let's go back to that last slide here. So the tone, let's go back to the tone. What tone should it be? Well, customer language, customer focus. Sometimes the tone needs to be very assertive, very direct, very hard, depending on your audience. So like, for example, if you're talking to a chief information security officer, you don't want to come in strong, talking, scaring. You don't want to use scare tactics, for example, for chief information security. You want to talk about empathy. Like, hey, I know you're losing security staff because you're churning, or I know you're way shorthanded, right? So the tone should be empathetic, this should be understanding, yet a little pointed because you want them to take some action. Now, a different persona, maybe the chief HR officer, CHRO, that tone might be a very different tone. That might be much more warm, empathetic, compassionate, friendly. It's a different kind of a tone. Maybe you're speaking about things like diversity initiatives that are going on nowadays, equity and diversity. That tone is going to be very friendly and maybe a little bit business oriented. Another tone might be if you're selling to a security architect, or let's say an architect, a technical architect, they really care about facts and figures and data, and they want, show me, prove it to me, hard numbers and data. So that might be more of a logical tone. So think of tone in terms of different emotional vectors, confident, strong, warm, friendly, business oriented. Sometimes it could be very logical, brainy, intellectual. So start again with understanding your customer. How do they speak? What words do they use? What tone does the customer have on their website? So those would be some of my thoughts. Remember, it's always outside in. Start with the outside. Start with that customer. Be the voice of the customer. Be the customer. And say, how would you want to be spoken to if you're that customer? And then work backwards. Don't let the engineering team or product management team, strong arm you into telling or talking the way they think, because they may not be right. That's your job.
Absolutely. And a tough job it is too, which is why we're here. So I just want to thank you so much for all your time and effort, Sridhar. That was very generous of you to kind of run through all those questions. Trust me when I say there's plenty more in the chat, there is. So anybody who hasn't had their question asked, definitely connect with Sridhar either on LinkedIn or by email. You can see his details on the screen now. So what a fantastic session. Thanks again for your time. And we will be back live with another session in just 20 minutes time. So have a breather, stretch your legs, and we'll be back.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Product Marketing Alliance team. You guys are the best. We love you.
Thank you so much.
Product marketing folks. See ya. Bye-bye.